Tonight is Monday, November 13, and we're beginning tonight with our annual joint meeting between the Pleasantville Board of Trustees and the trustees of the Pleasantville Union Free School District. So welcome all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is an annual event. We flip-flop back and forth between meeting at their place and ours. We've spent quite an extraordinary period of time trying to rearrange the chairs so that we're all can see over the top of the table, and I think we've achieved that. So, why don't we introduce ourselves to everyone? I think everyone knows, but on our side of the table, I'm Peter Scheer, the mayor, Colleen Wagner, Joe Stargiotti, Steve Lord, Nicole Asquith, trustees, and Patty Dwyer, village administrator. You can take your team.
I'm Angela Vella. I'm currently president of the school board. Mary Fox Salter is our superintendent. We have trustees Louis Conti, Shane McGaffey, Emily Rubin Persons, and Larry Bowes.
I had a couple of things to say up front, and the first is to thank you all, and Mary in particular, for the assistance you provided for the Veterans Day ceremony that took place on Saturday. Really a nice event, normally held down at the gazebo, but because Veterans Day was on a Saturday, it ended up in front of the high school, which was a great setting for it, and very, very much appreciated Mary's assistance. And the school district also made the high school auditorium available to the American Legion Post for a concert that took place Saturday night. So thank you for that very nice service. Very much appreciated and contributed, I think, to a day that was meaningful to all who participated. I am just back from the annual legislative agenda setting meeting of the New York Conference of Mayors in Albany, which took place last night and this morning, and have come back with a number of things I'll be sharing with my board, but I know you all have the same concern, I assume, that we do about the proposals that have been made to either eliminate or limit in some way the deductibility of state and local taxes, potentially limiting or eliminating the deductibility of property taxes, income taxes, and mortgage interest. So those are all factors that obviously have a very, very, very significant effect on folks that live in high tax areas like the New York metro area. And it's a matter of significant concern. So New York Conference of Mayors has encouraged all boards across New York State to pass a resolution opposing this, and we have a draft of that we're going to talk about in new business tonight at our meeting. It's certainly a matter of very, very significant concern. If either the proposals that are currently on the table in the House or the Senate were to be enacted, it would have a very, very significant effect on the overall tax burden borne by Pleasantville taxpayers. So,
And all across New York State.
Yeah. So
and many other states.
It's fair to say, I think, that the representatives in the Hudson Valley, certainly Nita Lowy, has been very clear in opposing this, for which we thank her. I gather from the discussions in Albany that that is not 100% the case for some representatives elsewhere in New York State, and it would be helpful, I think, if all of us are unified in trying to press for that. So,
Though in Long Island, Peter King is very much opposed and has said so.
Right.
Yeah.
right. So at any rate, we'll be talking about that later, but obviously it's a matter of concern. We've mentioned it at our meetings before. It really should be a matter of concern for all of us, because it would upset an apple cart that has existed for over 100 years and change the basis upon which people have planned their financial lives. So, significant problems. First item on our agenda was an update on collaborative community policing. Chief Eric Grutzner is here. Come on up.
So good evening, everyone. Mayor's
Good
Cole,
evening.
Mr. Mayor, President, everyone. I just wanted to touch base, speak to all of you and obviously everyone here sort of about the police department, what we're doing, how we're working with the schools, how we're sort of creating a strong and maintaining a very strong relationship with the schools, we think in service of the students and the residents here in the village. A few things to touch on since I'm just coming up on 1 year as chief, so I just wanted to talk about some of the things that we've enacted. First, probably something that we did here at one of the board meetings, and I think we're starting to see some fruit from it, is we created a special needs liaison officer position in order to stay in touch with and really interact on a new level with the families of children with special needs. So far, we're still sort of figuring out exactly how it works. I'll take some of the blame for I don't know that when we introduced it I was clear enough on exactly what the position was going to be. Officer Dave Casal, who has taken over the position, is doing this in addition to his original duties. He's not full-time scheduled to just handle this. However, we've given him great latitude to incorporate these new issues and this new paradigm into his work schedule. So at this point now, we're still looking for opportunities and looking to maximize the opportunities where we can introduce Dave to the community, the special needs community in town, and really sort of exchange ideas and talk about what the needs are for those families, what they can get from us, as well as what we can provide to them. So that was the first thing. Second thing is we had a little bit of a turnover in personnel in the department recently. We added a new officer into the detective division. He's not currently a detective. We're expecting to do that in February. That's more of a housekeeping rules and regs sort of internal issue. But you'll probably see Officer Joseph Zane at a lot of the different school functions. He's been at a lot of functions already. He'll be responding up to the schools if there ever is an issue or if there ever is a need. He is currently trained as a juvenile officer. We have all of our, everyone in, we have 2 detectives, 1 detective sergeant. They are all currently trained as juvenile officers. Our existing youth officer, Morgan Cole-Hatchard, is also trained in advanced youth officer. It's, the training is different, but once you have that basic level of training, the advanced level sort of gets into more detail. So we know that we have 3 officers who are working ready to go inside the detective division if there ever is a need for a juvenile officer. In addition, we have a number of officers who are in patrol who also have received that training, even though they don't have that assignment, because we do recognize that that's a critical aspect to providing services to the village. So you will see Officer Zane in and around the schools, at the different events, interacting. So he's introducing himself, getting to know everyone. Obviously, Morgan Cole-Hatchard has been our youth officer now for a number of years. She does a fantastic job for us in the schools. She's teaching with the 8th grade class, and she's in each one of the schools, meeting the kids, building those relationships, and we're very, very happy with the way we're going on this. Bringing Joseph in to this position, we are not looking to take Morgan necessarily out of the position. We're looking at having 2 fully functioning youth officers, really kind of doubling down on the services that the department provides to the schools, and making someone available as obviously we're available whenever we're needed, but twice as many opportunities for interaction with the students. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up Pleasantville Strong. I think obviously there are people who can speak in more detail about the success that program has represented, but we continue between the village and the schools and the police department and the folks at Pleasantville Strong. I think we've created some new avenues for outreach, to get the message out, to really let people know how serious this crisis is to every community in the county, in the state, in the country. This is an epidemic, a health epidemic. I don't think I'm speaking out of school when I say it's a health epidemic unlike anything we've ever seen. The way it came about, and we're going to need to take drastic measures to address it, not just for this community, but just for the future in general. And Pleasantville Strong is really on the front of that, and we've committed to, as the village has, as the school has, excuse me, really committed our resources to make that as successful as possible. I could speak a little bit about the lockdown drills that we've attended at the school and the district safety meetings that we have attended and we've been invited to, and we so appreciate the relationship that we have and those invitations. But really what I think the key takeaway, especially for everybody in the village, not necessarily the people on this side of me, but on that side of me, the idea that the communication and the relationships between those three, the police department, the schools, and the village, is as strong as ever. These are relationships that were created by people who held my position and held the positions of people in this jurisdiction way before I was here, but we have all recognized how successful we've been working together, how important it is. I say many times that whenever I speak to chiefs in obviously not all jurisdictions, but in other jurisdictions, they're surprised at how easily the schools, the village government, the police department work together and solve problems. There's no egos in the room. There's no turf wars. There's no rivalries. It is all about simply providing the best services, the most necessary interventions to the people who need it, and to getting our positive message out to the people who don't necessarily need the services now, but should definitely know that we're there for them when the time comes. So it's most of what I have. I have one quick other thing I wanted to talk about, but were there any other questions or any other issues?
Questions on that or comments?
First of all, Eric, you've done an outstanding job your first year as chief, and
Thank you.
we so value the partnership with our police department. You're 100% right in terms of your comments. On our board agenda tomorrow night, we're on is subject to approve is the district safety plan, and there's just some nuts and bolts in there, changing names and. But you were instrumental, as was your team. You never hesitate to, when we invite you in to help with something, you guys are always there. I feel rather old now. Officer Zane is now a third former student of mine that's in the police department. Where did the time go? That's all I can say.
You don't have to admit that, you know.
It's okay. I'm so proud of them. And they
I
are
think
at,
he was in my son's class. This is really getting to be nervous making.
But again, fantastic job, the work with Pleasantville Strong, Morgan, everyone. It just, we are so fortunate in this community, particularly the parents and kids here, to have such a great police department and always so proactive. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I already met Joe with Morgan at homecoming festivities. So he's been around already.
Yes.
So thank you for all your efforts.
Joe was very active before he was reassigned to the
Yes.
detective division. He knew a lot of the kids already. A lot of the kids knew him already. We thought it was just a natural sort of progression for him now to fully dedicate his time to doing investigations, and especially to being available for those types of functions.
Right.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. Any further comments on any of that?
Oh, just wanted to thank, I mean, I know it's just kind of a joint thing. Maybe I should be thanking you guys more because you approved it, but the changes that were made over the summer, getting ready for the school year, in terms of moving crosswalks.
Yes.
You're right, Shane, 100%.
That's been a big
And
improvement.
safety, and I just wanted, I mean, does that seem to be working out well, you know, from your point of view?
It seems to be. We seem to be getting a lot of positive feedback about it. We've looked into it, and anecdotally, we feel as if those changes have definitely been positive. It's always a work in progress, especially with crossing guards and things like that. We're always looking. We're never to a point where we feel like we've got everything exactly where we want it. As soon as we think that, then something we get the curveball in the mix there. But no, so far that the traffic situation, we feel as if the input has been positive, the reaction from everyone has been positive, that things are working out very much better.
It's always an interesting concept. We get many comments. I know the board trustees do about, why you should open all on time or close at the same time. And I was like, well, if you think traffic's bad now, if we did that, there'd be like gridlock in the village. But again, it's always those tweaks and nuances, and you're always available to come and take a look at a traffic pattern and give us input as to what we can do and adjust. I really do like the flow now out of the middle school parking lot next to, in between the Huckinen and Stargiotti House. They have painting that. Something simple as that has made a big difference at dismissal time.
Yeah.
So again, thank you.
The crossing guard at Ashland Avenue has been a big improvement, and I think just that there is a person standing there has created more caution with the drivers because they know somebody is there. So they're slowing down, they're approaching the turns more carefully. The whole thing is more manageable, I
Yeah,
think, for sure.
to that point, the traffic engineers and, thanks to the village board for having the foresight to realize that this, addressing these problems has to be more scientific, for lack of a better term, than just, I see a problem, what can we do about it? And we brought in specialists and people to really look at each one of these intersections. And one of the points that they brought up very early on was sometimes it's just the little things. It can be just a little bit of paint on the road. It can be just the presence of a person there that sort of stops people from making bad decisions. Because really, most of the time, traffic issues, unless we're talking about weather or an animal or something, it's really mostly, a lot of it's based on bad decisions by
Yeah,
people who are
people are rushing.
unfortunately
I think it also
driving.
helps that you pushed back the parking by Ashland there too, so that people can't park so close to the turn
Or
into middle
stand.
school drive.
Stand.
Or stand, or
Right.
just sit there and wait. It just makes it easier for people to get in and out.
Yep.
So
Line
the
of sight's-
combination of
And obviously, the
everything has
messaging,
helped.
the messaging has been critical. The enforcement, obviously, that's the second, sort of that second half of the puzzle. And we would encourage anyone here, anyone, anywhere that, if there is an enforcement error, I would love to be able to say that I'm going to have officers at every corner and at every hot spot every day to make sure that there's no one parked there. We do our best to be where we can be as often as possible, but if there's an ongoing problem, please, I get a number of calls or emails from people that say, oh, this one car has been parked in the same spot illegally for the last 3 weeks. I don't know why people waited 3 weeks. Please feel free to call us right away. But no,
And I think the speed bump on Sunnyside has slowed things down as well.
Very effective.
Yeah,
The speed cliff, you mean?
the speed hill.
We had to reduce it a little bit. It was a little too high
A
first
little bit
off.
of a drop there.
We were contemplating a public-private partnership. It could be branded by a transmission company or something.
I do think
Speed
it's-
hump brought to you by. It's worth commenting that a number of neighborhoods have asked us for speed humps after, I think, the successful implementation of the one in front of Joe's house, or down from Joe's house on Romer, which was a big help. Folks on Sunnyside were interested in, as you see, we have executed it. But with Patty's leadership, we engaged traffic engineers to look at a number of other circumstances and do traffic counts because there are a bunch of issues attached to adding these things. They're not free. They create some other issues. Some emergency response folks are concerned about having too many of them. And, it's easy to see why almost every neighborhood might, or at least some folks in almost every neighborhood would say they want it. So we've created I think, a reasonable decision matrix for the conditions under which such a thing would be warranted. So can you comment about the whole traffic flow situation at the library, Chief?
Definitely still under review, still working on trying to figure out exactly what the best permanent plan is. We have tried, we spent a lot of time towards the end of last year, through the summer and into the beginning of this year, meeting with the library. I know John Fearon from the library is here. He'd like to also speak to the issue a little bit.
Please do, yeah.
But, we spent a lot of time discussing it, going over it, reviewing it, and between the traffic issues there and, of course, what I know has been messaged out through the schools is sort of that issue of, unsupervised kids at the library. We've tried to address that as best as possible and sort of find that balance, that correct, what the library will be responsible for, what will be responsible for, how we're going to handle these situations, message that out to the community, and hopefully just create some understanding so that no one's put in a position where they're asked to do things that are maybe a little bit outside of their lane. But I think I'll let John speak a little bit to the situation.
Yeah. Quick background, but I think probably everybody
John
knows it.
is well known, but John Fearon,
Oh,
library
I'm
director.
library director?
Yes.
Well, it's hard to look in both. Yeah, we have a problem of too many people in the same place at the same time, exacerbated by too many vehicles in the same small area. We felt it was becoming more and more of an issue, and we started reaching out to Patty and to the chief, and then at the same time we started getting some notes and phone calls and emails from people who were seeing things in the parking lot that was scaring them. So the good news is that, and thanks to the village, the chief, and the school, Mary, thank you so much for your support. You know, we did get a letter out. We got the message out early this year to parents. The issues are related. You know, the safety in the parking lot is related to numbers, and the numbers is related to people thinking of the library as a good place for after-school childcare when it isn't appropriate. We do counts every afternoon. The initial numbers, September, October this year, we're down about, or we have about 30% less children in the library on the adult side. They would be the unaccompanied children. The numbers on the children's side have not changed. So I think the parents have been very responsive. I think the message has got out. So, you know, what we're in a position now where we're just looking to consolidate that. We're developing a good relationship. I think Vivian runs the floor basically. You know, we're connecting with the kids because it's a little more manageable. We now have enough seats for everybody. You know, things like that make it a little bit easier. So we've looked at it. I think we've all felt that the design of the parking lot creates a little confusion for some people. It's not obvious it's a one-way system. So we've managed to find the money, and Jeff and Patty are going to run a project. We're going to reconfigure it to change it from a kind of a rectangle with a single entrance to a horseshoe. One way in, one way out, and we're going to take all the parking spots and make them 45 degrees so that it's clearly obvious that it's one way. One of the things that people were commenting on was that people were reversing out and turning the wheel the wrong way and then going out the wrong way. Sometimes people would see that it was backed up and they'd go the wrong way to avoid waiting, and so we're hoping the reconfiguration will take a lot of that out.
I did get a little feedback about concern about adding another curb cut affecting the pedestrian experience as you walk along. It was, you'd have to pass over 2 driveways instead of 1. That was the concern.
Yeah, I mean, everything has a,
Right.
you know, like you say, every action has a
Yes,
consequence.
exactly.
At least, you know, maybe that's bad, maybe it's good because the cars are coming in one direction.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of years ago, I think Jeff, or the DPW, the entrance to the lot, they painted it a bit, and they put a crosswalk, is that what you call it? That seemed to help a bit too.
Would you make the existing one smaller so that it would be really one car in at a time?
Well, I think the design will be by the village DPW, where we're working with the chief on that. I assume because it's going to be designed for one way in and one way out, that they would naturally be just wide enough for one vehicle. Probably, right?
Well,
Yeah.
Back on the mic if you're
From
good.
what I looked at, it would, and we would have a nice green space between those two driveways.
Yeah,
But we're still in design.
yeah.
What if you just made all the parking spots on an angle and left the same driveway?
I would defer to Jeff on that, and chief, yeah,
I mean, that
Yeah.
might reinforce the one-wayness of
That
the whole
definitely
thing.
reinforces
Yeah.
the one way,
Without
and
the
then you
need
only
for
have
the
one
second
driveway.
driveway.
Are there,
Part of the problem.
Paint big arrows on the ground?
we actually, yeah, we if you Google Earth us, somebody complained that there were no arrows, and I Google Earthed us, and all you see are arrows. There's a lot of arrows. People are driving over them, but there are arrows. Yeah.
So I'm the liaison from the village board to the library board, and so I was at a meeting, we had a conversation about it, and I looked at the design, and 2 things struck me. The new design seems to create actually more parking spaces than are there now, which is nice. But the other thing about the 2 curb cut, and I think the library board liked it, was that right now, if the library parking lot is full, you can't close that entrance exit curb cut, because if people want to leave, they cannot, because you're putting barriers up in front of but if a horseshoe parking lot is full, you can close the entrance without closing the exit. People can leave without more people coming in until things clear out a little bit, so that's an option. Is that
It would
right?
be an
Is that
option,
fair?
yeah. I mean,
You know-
ideally that wouldn't have to happen if if the new system addressed the issues. But yeah, it is, I mean, there is some history there. We did try it out a few years ago, and it was very effective in terms of creating a safer parking lot and a calmer parking lot. But it took the problem and it put it onto Romer. And Chief Love at the time came up and said it's actually creating more problems than it's solving, because you had a lot of cars backed up on Romer, and that's already a problem with Romer, Bedford, the lefts, the rights. But yeah, we're, the way we see it, we're a library, and we like to think we know a little bit about books and reference services and story times. We don't know, we're not experts on public safety, we're not experts on public works, so they're really
parental psychology.
So they're really, the nice thing about what we're doing is we're working very closely with the chief and with the DPW, and we're following their advice. So, if you've got like technical questions about the design, or if there's issues about safety, then we're just kind of following the lead there. The whole point is just to try to make it safer. And I think the response of the parents to the letter shows that they're willing to work with us, which is a nice thing. You build a library 200 yards from a middle school and 100 yards from a high school and 300 yards from an elementary school in a district with no buses. Nothing's gonna, this is always gonna be an issue. I have letters going back to the 70s where the library director is screaming at the school board and they're yelling back. I think we've come a long way since then. So, we're really just trying to keep the kids safe. And I do think people are more aware of that now, right?
But I think
Maybe
too,
in the past, yeah.
I mean, we need to celebrate the fact that we have a library that's open, every day, and that it's full.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
I think sometimes people hear closing, the parking lot and maybe children not being welcome. I don't think it's a question of that, it's safety, but I'm really excited about the fact that we have a very vibrant, very busy library where we should be welcoming as many people as we can.
Exactly.
Safely.
It's a question of balance. It's not having 6 or 7-year-olds unaccompanied every day is not smart.
6 and 7?
Sometimes,
Right.
it's unusual, but yeah, it happens.
But for the older kids to go there to do homework for a little while,
Well,
as long as they're behaving.
yeah, in an ideal world, it's a hangout. There's not a ton of homework done, and that's the reality of it. But that's not the point. The point it really is that you don't want to, create this false vision and say everything's hunky-dory, and then something bad happens because you haven't had the courage to recognize there's an issue. And if people genuinely think we're part of the school system and that their very young children are going to be supervised and taken care of in the same way that they are on Bedford Road, that's a problem. And I think we've got the message out that that's not the case. But at the moment, what we're really talking about is the parking lot, which is a whole other issue. It's outside the library and it's outside of our expertise. It's vehicles and children, and it's a question of trying. Suburban is a big car. It's a lot bigger than in most middle schoolers, and if it's reversing out of a spot and kids are running across, it's not a good scene. So we're trying to do something about that. And then, we go from there. We have, as libraries are changing with digital technology, with people's lives being very busy, we're seeing different things happening. And our story times are up almost 300%. We had over 12,000 children at our story times last year. We have Miss Debbie is becoming famous across the county.
Miss Debbie was my kids.
Yeah.
I mean, she's been doing story times for a long time.
Yeah, we had we celebrated one of our anniversaries last year, our 50th, which is the Mount Pleasant Public Library. The actual original library, I just realized, is older than the village. We're 1895. But we had over 1,000 people come to that family day. It was a fantastic day. So yeah, we feel that we're doing our best and we're creating a great connection with people. Like I say, if we get overwhelmed with volumes, it's really hard for us. It just becomes traffic control. But the volumes we're getting now, since the response, we feel is great. It's a nice atmosphere in the afternoon. The children are respectful. it's good. We feel it's under control. We're not worried about safety. We're just looking out to solidify that, you know. And I've seen it kind of go like goes and comes and goes and comes, and that when things are good, you kind of take your eye off it a little bit, and then it creeps back. So we just want to try to keep it where it is now, which is that the people who come are welcome, they have a safe environment, we're able to work with them, the parking lot's a lot more sane than it was, and we just want to build on that. And maybe not have to keep revisiting this issue, and focus on more interesting things,
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say, I confess I'm still a little bit concerned about those kids that are in the in-between years, particularly the 5th and 6th graders who seem to, and I know that there were a lot of them that were showing up at the library without parents, and that you were being put in the position of being babysitter, which seems unfair to me. At the same time, I also know of one family in particular, but I've talked to a couple of other people who felt that they were being targeted as being part of the problem and feel that their children are no longer welcome at the library, even though their mother was often there as well. And I wonder if part of the problem isn't that they're in this sort of awkward in-between stage, because they were being kicked out of the children's section because they were no longer considered children, but they're not quite capable of acting like an 8th grader, say, who's able to sit down in a certain area. I know that physically it's a very small space, but I just wonder if there's a way, and I'm not sure that this is entirely an issue strictly for the library, because I was also curious about to what extent, since I'm going to have a 5th grader next year, so I'm going to be embarking on this adventure soon, but I'm not quite there yet, so I don't know as much the habits of, what happens after school, what's available after school, what the options are, and it may be that some of these kids, what they really need to do is run around and throw a ball around for a while, and that's part of the problem. But I feel like, I want to share that with you because I'm getting a lot of feedback on my end about the awkwardness
I don't
of that.
quite understand. Could you try to...
I guess, so one question is there a space in the library in between the younger children and the ones that are, closer to adulthood? Is there a way that could be addressed, or is that something that the schools could address in some way?
At 3 o'clock, it's just a question of finding a chair. I mean, even
Yeah.
though it's quieter than it used to be. I mean, last year, we had children lying in the lobby, sitting on the floor all over the library because every chair was taken. We have 40 seats in the adult section, and I think 4 times 16 in the children's room. That's it,
Right.
And then we have to study Carl. So
Yeah.
I can't, speak to specifics without knowing more details, but if bigger kids are in the children's room and little kids are looking for a place to sit with parents, maybe they'll say, there's room over there, go sit over there. I don't know. That happens in most libraries, I think. In terms of, with the tax cap, with all the pressure now, the possible reduction in the interest relief, in the property tax relief, I don't think anybody's looking to issue a multi-million-dollar bond to expand the library. And
No.
within the confines of what there is, we work with what we have.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. As I said at the beginning, it's a volume issue. If you have if you have a small space and a lot of people go into it, it becomes crowded.
What about
Yeah.
in the schools? I don't understand very well how this happens. Are the libraries open for kids after school at all, or are those occupied by clubs and things like that?
Sometimes there's groups using them, but the issue is we don't have staff.
Right, so
To-
you can't handle the
We
the
don't have
liability
staff
that would be
to
involved.
be responsible for them
Right.
at that point.
Yeah.
I have a question. The high volume of kids that you have with the chairs and situation, how many, is that an hour? Like, what's the length of time that you have this?
It's a little
large
less now
flow?
than it was last year, but sometimes it depends on the schedules. But it can
Is it like
in
an
the
hour?
busy season, if it's cold, if it's raining, if there's no sport, it can be from 2:30 to about 4:45.
That long where you
5,
have
yeah.
too many children in the
I
library?
wouldn't say too many. It's just that most of the chairs are taken. you know, so it's crowded. Yeah, which isn't always a bad thing either.
that's the good
It's
problem.
yeah, it's just
Because it's a
that,
safe
yeah.
place. I mean, I have a seventh grader. I have my older children would use the library as well. So sometimes it was to be with a friend, and sometimes it was to just be there on their own.
It's safe and it's a public building, so it's safe in the sense that any public building,
Well,
like a
it's
mall, is safe.
It's a
or isn't
comfortable place
safe.
for them
Yeah,
to go and read
Yeah. If they,
and do
yeah.
work.
If they read it.
Yeah, I
They
mean,
read, my
like I
kids
say,
read.
I think, to get back to the question about fifth graders too, you know, I think you've got to understand too that these are children who've been in an educational controlled setting for 7 hours.
Right.
And they're high energy and, you know, they're ready. I mean, when I was
They
a
need to
kid, we
run
used to
around,
always play
yeah.
after school. Also, they want to be independent, you know, so you're going to run into the problem of if you set up any sort of adult approved activity with supervisors, it's the last place in the world most of them are going to want to be, you know. I mean, that's part of the appeal of the library, yeah. I mean, this is reality, right? You know, so we're trying to work with that. But I think the main issue, or the main point I'm trying to get across is that I feel there's been a really positive response to the joint effort.
Right.
Mary,
Absolutely.
Chief, ourselves, the village, saying, look, young children, really young children shouldn't be here because we're not the school.
We're not staff.
We're not staff for it, we're not, I mean, I heard some of the hoops you guys had to jump through to get one extra classroom out in Bedford Road, right? It's like square footage and supervisors and training and, you know, all that, yeah. So, you know, I think we just have to keep doing that, and then I think we're fine. It's not really going to be an issue,
And certainly
yeah.
we'll make sure that, you know, on certain days, we do tell parents, like whether it's Eastern, Western Hemisphere Day, please don't park in the parking lot. We do tell our visitors if we're having a site visit, you know, don't, if that's the library. And both libraries have we're very fortunate in this community to have a public library right smack in the middle of everything, but they have two very different functions than a school library program. So John's right 100%, like they can be, we have staff till 3:15, but after they've been there looking at our teachers for 7.5 hours,
They're ready to
they
rock and
really,
roll,
they
yeah.
really don't want to be there any longer than that. We do have after-school programs, we partner with the PTA, we partner with rec. We have 80% of our kids in 7th and 8th grade participating in modified sports. So there are options, and we will encourage children to participate in those options. But sometimes you're absolutely right. Sometimes they really don't want to look at
And
Marissa
they would
Schottler
there'd be
until
something
3:15.
there'd be something wrong with them at a certain point, right? If they're willing to be that controlled for that long, yeah.
John, just a quick
Yeah.
follow-up question. How many of the children after school do you think are there for a very short period of time just to get picked up versus the ones that may stay for a longer period of time, say 2 hours, 2.5 hours?
Well, 2.5 hours is very rare.
Right.
Yeah, that's
So
unusual.
is the majority
The
15 or
majority
20
is.
minutes, or is it?
It's a little hard to tell because it's a little chaotic,
fluid,
and a
right.
lot of people do get picked up in the parking lot, so they don't even make it into the building, and some will run in and then run out. But yeah, I'd say the vast majority of children that go to the library after school are less than 45 minutes.
Okay.
You know, and then there's another group that's a little, maybe between 45 minutes and an hour and a half, and then longer than that we notice.
Right.
Yeah,
Then you know
and
there's-
sometimes we worry about it because, you know, when you're closing at 6 o'clock and there's a
Right.
kid who's been there
There's a fifth
since
grader
2:30, it's uncomfortable. We've been all around the houses on this. In New York State, there is no age limit or age cutoff. You know, it's circumstantial, it's the maturity of the child, you know, when we were doing this back in the days when Chief Charletti and Youth Officer Benura, you know, they all sort of felt if we were going to have a hard and fast rule, 5th grade would be 10, 11 is the right age. But because we have a K through 4 and a 5 through 8, that doesn't work either. So, and that kind of addresses, you know, your point. Yeah, 5th graders are like neither fish nor fowl.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so, you know, but I don't want to be negative. I mean, I do think we were really concerned last year. I think a lot of people were. We cared about it. We felt it was getting, you know, it was overwhelming, but we've been really impressed with the response of the parents. It's been noticeably better. It's calmer. So as things stand, you know, I think we feel we're comfortable with the children in the library and we're working with them, and most, it's starting to get to the point where staff know their names, they know staff's names. They tease us a bit, but, they're decent kids. The biggest issue for us is outside, because that's where we don't have the expertise, and that's where if something does go wrong, it goes wrong quickly and it goes wrong badly.
Right.
Yeah,
Crazy.
so.
That's what I was kind of
yeah.
envisioning.
And you don't have
because-
staff out there. You
Well,
don't have
even
staff
if we
in the
did,
library.
they wouldn't know what to do, and they
Right,
might end
right,
up doing more
right.
harm than good. We did try that, and we had a custodian do it, and he was like, come, and I'm like,
Right.
no!
And I'm sure.
Yeah, it's tricky, right, directing traffic?
And with the modern world, so to speak, the parents roll up, they text to the child who's inside, I'm here, child comes running out. So there's not even the interaction of the parent parking necessarily. So
No.
I can imagine that that's causing a little bit of.
Yeah, I mean, if it was possible to have a designated pickup spot where you could have a nice flow, I do think a lot of people would utilize that.
Yeah.
But I just, I don't think there's any space anywhere to do that. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
All right.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you very much for
Guys.
that, John.
All right.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
You missing my girls?
Yes, very much so.
All right, next on our agenda was Pleasantville Strong and Public Health Initiatives. Colleen, you've been
Yeah,
working
sure.
on that.
Yeah, sure. So Pleasantville Strong, actually, Shane and Mary, myself, Juliet, John Miller's our fearless leader. We have Melissa Moran, and Nicole Malgrinos is in the audience here today, who's been our coalition coordinator. Pleasantville Strong has been a great collaboration, I think, between the school, the village, and the police as well. And the folks that I just mentioned, we are the steering committee, and that's exactly, I think, what we try and do, which is to steer people towards the right information. We talk about prevention, we talk about education, and we talk about getting as many people involved as we possibly can. So just a few things, and I'm going to ask maybe Nicole to come up and mention, but Youth to Youth is a big initiative, and I think right now they're bringing in the middle schoolers to meet with our high schoolers so that we can really get kids learning all of this and getting involved at an earlier age. Parent University is set for March 3rd, and that's going to be lots of topics. And I think, again, sometimes people think about Pleasantville Strong and think maybe about alcohol and drugs. But it's about all substances, so that includes, we just had a very successful vaping forum, but it just includes wellness, self-esteem, health, good choices. So it's not just about sort of those substances, which I think is really important. There's a big positive social norms committee coming out, campaign, which is great because it talks about what the numbers really are. So for example, there's this trend in school where children think that everybody's getting high or everybody's drinking, and the reality is they're not. So Positive Norm says, hey, look, 86% of you didn't get high on the weekend. And don't quote me on that number. I don't know if that's the right number, but they're really high. So that's going to be a campaign that's going on.
Just to change the narrative there, right?
Exactly. And then there's so many community-based initiatives, so I thought I would ask Nicole to come up and talk about some of those as well. Nicole's
Thank you,
done
Nicole.
an amazing job. And the one thing I'd like to say, though, is we're a steering committee, but we really need input, help, support, and even if it's just a small thing, we welcome everybody and anybody to the table to come up with ideas on how we can reach out and touch children, adults, community members.
Thank you, Colleen.
Yep.
And I appreciate all of the accolades for the work that Pleasantville Strong is doing. However, I can't own that. This is a grant that works within a strategic prevention framework, which is very much rooted in systems theory. And so the idea here is we find key stakeholders, like the Pleasantville Police Department, like the Board of Ed, the village, our local pharmacies, and we engage those people, and we do the grassroots work to get the prevention message out. For example, I love that you touched, Chief, on the opioid epidemic. So the way that Pleasantville Strong looks at it is we frame it in terms of where can we go to get the prevention message out. So we know that our prevention specialist at the high school is doing that work in the classroom. We know that Detective Cole Hatchard is going to be working with those 8th graders. But then I partner with the chief and Detective Hatchard. We sit down and we look at their key informant data and their data. I look at the county data. I look at the prevention needs assessment data that we take every 2 years from our 7th through 12th graders. And we try to put together a strategic plan based on that. So for instance, we partnered to put together Narcan palm cards. They are located in the police department. They go into every Narcan kit that's distributed. They are right by the take-back, the prescription take-back box downstairs. They are also at the pharmacy. At the same time, we do a radio interview where Sal and I are on the radio, and the chief and Morgan. So what we're doing is, you can see where I'm going, it's a systems-based approach. And we really feel like that produces an environmental level change. And that's what we're talking about for all our core measures. So when you're talking about alcohol, or you're talking about opioids, or you're talking about marijuana, all of these have to be approached sort of, it's like insidious in a way. You know, you're really trying to reach kids as young as, 4th grade in some cases. You're trying to reach, all developmental ages. The grant itself is written for 7th through 12th graders, and that's how it's funded. It's a federally funded grant. We're in, as of October 1st, year 3, which is when we really start to look at sustainability. And this is a 5-year grant. We will apply for it again, but you never know. We want to make sure. So those key stakeholders are very, very crucial to making the work move forward. Because we want to be able to provide certain programs ad infinitum if we can, and keep that prevention message going. To that end, we have recently partnered with Remax Ace Realty here in Pleasantville. The owner, Thomas Gonzaga, approached me at Pleasantville Day back in May. And what they're doing for us is, with the most gratitude, I share this, they're going to be giving us a percentage of all of the broker's fees for sales and purchases of homes in Pleasantville. Those funds are going to go directly to the Youth to Youth Club, which is wonderful on so many levels because it gives these kids fiscal responsibility. It gives them the ability to run their own coalition. They're going to come up with their own initiatives. One of the things they talked about the other day, I went to the meeting last week, they want to send more kids to the International Youth to Youth Summit in the summer. Right now, I've got funding to send 3 kids. And they said, well, can we send 10? I said, well, let's see. We've got to get the word out. So they're totally engaged in the process. So we are really looking to always grow that capacity in terms of our partnerships so that we're moving forward and thinking about how we can sustain the grant. So that's where we're at right now. Any questions?
Nicole, I just want to say you're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Colleen's 100% right. I know on behalf of the steering committee, we are just so proud of the work that you're doing. You always come, you're the Energizer bunny, I have to tell you, constantly.
I appreciate that.
And you ran, Mr. Gonzaga at the Remax agency, he, when we went there that day, and there were, the police chief was there were a lot of local residents there, our Youth to Youth Club, but he told the story. I asked him why. I mean, why do you, this was such a generous offer. And he told us all that it was his nephew who was killed last year. He was the Manhattanville student who was walking home from White Plains and was killed. And he said, if this saves one child, this is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. So it was a touching story, very generous of them. They were so excited to do that, do this for our community. So, and thank you for everything, Nicole. Great year, and to the chief as well. Thank you.
And I want to do a shout out to Judy Mezzi.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks,
it's
Colleen.
Student Assistant Services, which used to be a county department, and now it's sanctioned sort of by the county. It's sort of a hybrid. But Judy has been a tremendous asset, information, and really has helped us to become sort of what everybody wants to be. You know, and we're getting, you know, requests from communities that don't have these types of things to do it. But Judy's just been amazing, and it's sort of like when Judy says we should do it, we'll do it, because she has great experience. So I think the two of you together is just a winning team.
Thank you. And do come out to Community Prevention Night, November 30th at the high school. We're running programs for 7th through 12th graders and parents concurrently. And come to a coalition meeting. You're not bound to come to all of them, but if you can drop in, find out some more about what it is we're doing. I think that the more input we get from community members, this is a community coalition, so we need to hear from you.
Well, what I love is that you adapt, like as things come up, as things become more important to touch on. You know, it's not the same thing every year. You've run different programs on different types of substances, different programs for students, different programs for parents, which I think is great because the more different vehicles you can use, the more effective it is in getting the message out. So, like Mary said, you certainly don't sit on your laurels and just do the same thing every year. What I love is that you're constantly coming up with new ways to get the messages out there, and that's great.
And also, just to mention, Pleasantville Strong, together with the library, actually will be sponsoring 3, I think, more youth mental health first aid classes. The next one is January 20th. It's a great class on prevention and learning about the signs and symptoms for youth who are in trouble.
Colleen, thank you
January 20th.
and thank you for running those classes, because that's all based on your generosity of time, so thank you.
And to that end, I'm sorry, I just wanted to say pleasantvillestrong.org, pleasantvillestrong.org, that's the website.
Right.
And there are a lot of resources available, as well as upcoming dates and current events, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Sorry, Larry.
Isn't there something on November 30th?
Yes, that's Community Prevention Night. Right.
One of the things, and maybe we can talk to the youth group as well, though, when we talked about this in its inception a little bit, and I'm good friends with John, is a lot of times teenagers, in particular younger teenagers who can't drive, 13 to 15-year-olds or 16-year-olds, on Friday night when there's not a basketball game or a play or a football game, they don't, most of them don't want to be home, right? They want to be with their friends. And that can lead to situations, obviously, that we're all talking about here. I'd like to see some sort of, maybe some survey as to the types of events that kids of that age group in particular would like to attend, because we don't know, frankly.
Right.
I don't profess to know. And as we talked about before, the last thing they want to be is controlled again, right? They want to have some partnership in creating some events. So I'd like to see some.
We did that at the rec center. Linda did that, and we tried to offer basketball nights. And I think it's kind of what John says. At a certain age, they want nothing to do with anything that we assign control rules to. Well, actually, Mary, I think you offered the middle school gym, and we were having that and movies, and it was just so, the attendance was really low. Linda's tried a few other things.
Maybe we can do
I almost think if we put don't go to the gym.
We'll publish a list of things we don't recommend. Yes.
Well, that's why it's great that the high school youth group is reaching out to the 7th and 8th graders.
Yeah.
Maybe they can come up with something together that would be more palatable for them.
And you'd be amazed if you ask these kids what they want or what's going on in their lives, they are pretty forthcoming.
Yeah.
Particularly when you hand over that piece of power. And Strong can support all kinds of positive social norms activities. I mean, we'd be happy to do that. I know in other communities, the way they solve that sort of, well, we don't want to go to the rec center on a Friday night and hang out with a bunch of grown-ups, is they actually employ teens that are 16 to 18 to come in, and it's just hang time. So it's like knock hockey and board games and really just having a healthy environment that's actually run by older teens. So that's a model that I've seen work with other coalitions, something to think about.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Nicole.
Thank you.
Can I just say one more thing quickly? In terms of getting the message out, if you could if you have, you know, a particular event or just you're trying to sort of reach out to get people involved, if you could send me the information either through social at pleasantville-ny.gov or just my personal.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
That would be awesome.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you so much.
For the village Facebook page.
Right.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank
Forgot to
you,
mention that.
Nicole, for that, and thank you for mentioning, and I just want to follow on, you mentioned the prescription drug drop box that we have downstairs, and am I correct, Chief, there's one in every police department in Westchester, is there?
No.
Well,
No, there
whatever.
isn't. They have a traveling one. that
So
comes.
we have a drop box right outside in the hallway in the police department. You don't have to interact with anyone, but we very, very, very strongly encourage folks who have drugs of any kind to come and drop them in there for two reasons. One, to get them out of your house and potentially out of the wrong hands, and secondly, to make sure they're safely disposed of. Folks have been in the habit of flushing things like that down the toilet, and it turns out now that the drinking water all across America is starting to show trace amounts of these kinds of pharmaceutical agents. So flushing stuff down the toilet isn't the right answer. All you have to do is drop in the Village Hall, first floor, right outside the police department, drop it in the drop box. So we very, very strongly
And also
encourage
just, you know, sort of to that end, you know, if you get a prescription for something, if you've had surgery or it needs some sort of meds, you know, talk to your doctor about how many pills do you actually need. You know, if anybody's ever had some wisdom teeth pulled, or you know, you've had some sort of surgery, you know, you'll get 50 pills, and do you really need that? And I think, you know, some doctors have gotten better about it, not all of them have, and even talk to the pharmacist about alternatives to medicine. Sal in particular is fantastic.
At
You know,
Pleasantville Pharmacy.
At Pleasantville Pharmacy, and he could be a great resource. You can actually even call Poison Control. They are fantastic about information with drugs. But I think that the amount of drugs that we get is far too many
Yep.
in a lot of instances.
Yep,
Yeah.
I agree.
So.
Well, and I read an article, I just actually pulled it up, hoping to pull this statistic out, and that came from the Harvard Medical School, that the use of opioids for pain treatment massively spiked with its peak actually in 2011. And this is from Harvard Medical School, at the astonishing height of prescribing in 2011, there were enough opioids prescribed for every single American to receive a month's worth of hydrocodone, which is one of the more commonly prescribed opioids. Just staggering numbers of these things. And that, at least in part, has led to the circumstance we're in right now, where every community, our own included, is experiencing the effects of that. So not just drugs, obviously, as all of these folks have already said. There was another interesting article. American College of Society of Clinical Oncologists just came out with a pretty convincing report that a significant consumption of alcohol beyond social drinking is a significant cancer risk. So all kinds of aspects of healthy choices and moderation in all that we do are messages we not only need to incorporate in our own lives, but to start to model for others. So, all right, anything else on that? Next item on the agenda was the village's master plan revisions and recent commercial and residential.
You know what, Peter, if I may?
Sure.
So I did want to thank the chief for the special needs officer. I think it's going to be, you know, you mentioned it started out lukewarm or whatever. I think it's going to be outstanding when it gets there. So I think that's a great initiative. I did want to mention that. And I did want to just say, because I know this whole issue with the opioids, to a large degree, this was caused by American pharmaceutical companies. Flat out was.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Right.
that's
They
just
lied.
the truth of the matter. Several
hid the
years ago,
data.
right, and you know that spike. I mean, someone produced those drugs. Let's be clear, right? So several years ago, I recall the settlement. They called them the tobacco settlements, where states' attorneys generals basically sued tobacco manufacturers. And in theory, at least, the money was to go back towards health initiatives to prevent smoking and whatnot. And I'm just wondering, Pete, if you heard anything, you know, in the Mayor's Association about some initiative like that, because something like that ought to be done. These folks have gotten away with murder.
Well, I know that Eric Schneiderman, the Attorney General in New York, has filed a number of cases of that sort. I haven't heard any suggestion that it's going to go anywhere near where the tobacco settlement went. And of course, that represented many attorneys general around the United States all banding together. But I'll inquire to his office and see where that stands. It's quite a staggering story, really.
Well, and I don't know if anybody recently saw the 60 Minutes piece, but many of the attorneys who worked in the DEA are now working for the pharmaceutical companies. And it's become a huge problem that they've switched teams. And in fact, I believe that Trump was going to name like an opioid czar who had originally worked for a pharmaceutical company and had switched. So
Well, he just named somebody today.
Yeah, well, it was a different, it was different person, but there's just there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
A lot, yeah.
Well, at any rate, it underscores, as is true for alcohol, tobacco, as well as drugs, the sometimes painful interplay of commercial and social interests. It doesn't always work to the world's advantage. All right, thank you for that. Master plan revisions and commercial and residential development. I'll take the lead on that, and others can chime in as they wish. As you guys know, we went through an extended process last year to update the village's comprehensive plan, and the result of that was a step we took within the last few months to make a number of zoning changes. The one that is most prominent is that we identified the block that has the post office in it, bounded by Memorial Plaza on one side, Cooley Street on the other, Manville and Bedford, as a location where we would permit a maximum height of 4 stories instead of 3. Prior to that, almost all of the village's commercial district permitted a 3-story building, but not a 4. We had various discussions about whether 4 stories might be appropriate somewhere else, including possibly at points of Washington Avenue. And in the end, the board decided, based on our own thoughts as well as lots of community input, to enact this enhanced development opportunity in that one specific block and nowhere else. Part of our thinking on that was, first off, the infamous building on the rock to the left of the post office as you face the post office is itself actually taller than 4 stories because it's a 3-story building on a 2-story rock. So the sort of scale of that is already extant in that location. And then the other aspect of that is, as you also know, as all of us know, parking continues to be a significant problem for us. Both the demand for commuter parking, the demand for parking for folks who work in downtown Pleasantville, the demand for parking people who live here, and then the demand for parking for people who'd like to come here and shop or use our restaurants and the like. So we are hopeful that we might have the opportunity to embed some additional parking into that block. As you know, we bought a few years back the former Lane Plumbing site behind the post office. That's currently a 48-car surface lot, and you can actually get yourself from Bedford to Manville by snaking your way through that lot but not going straight. And our general goal here is to push Cooley Street straight through as a regular street, and the building on the Rock site, which also incorporates the 1-story building behind that currently has the CrossFit training place, has been bought by a new owner who is developing a plan for it. So we don't have any formal proposal on that yet, but I think what's likely to be proposed is a mixed-use building that has retail on the first floor and then apartments above with parking below, probably dug down a level or 2. That presents an opportunity that we'll be discussing over the coming months about whether there's an opportunity to knit a parking piece into the Lane Plumbing lot, whether those two things make sense together, whether there's enough in it for this new owner or for us to make it worth doing. The model for that in some other...
So with the changes in zoning, what would be able to be built there now is 4 stories, including a lower level of parking, or in addition to a level of parking underneath?
You could dig 15 levels below. It's the visible... right.
part.
So
is the visible part above the rock?
No, the rock would be taken out.
glacial,
The
right.
rock,
Oh, the rock's coming out.
the rock's
Okay,
going to go
all
away,
right.
yeah.
And then,
It's going to be
and then
4
they can
stories
have
on
4
top of a rock.
stories.
It's going to be...
Okay,
yep.
so no more rock, just
No more rock.
4 stories.
So the result of that is the definition of of the maximum height is based on the average grade. There's some building department calculations attached to that, but I do think it likely that the proposal will be for parking below and retail on first floor and residential above. Whether in the end that turns into something that involves the lane lot as well is an open question, and as I say, we have no formal proposal on that. All this is really just recently happened. That real estate transaction, I think, has recently been signed, but I would say.
So one other question. So you guys didn't change the Washington Avenue corridor?
We did not.
So the building that's going up there where the old Try-and-Buy was is only 3 stories?
Correct. It's a 3-story building, and I'll get to that in a minute, but no changes were made to the heights anywhere else except that one block.
In terms of zoning?
I mean, there were some other changes we made in the zoning, modestly reduced the number of spaces required for certain size apartments because our professional planner benchmarked them against others and felt they were unnecessarily broad and the like. But part of our reason for doing this was not only to make sure that our zoning and regulations actually made sense with the world as it exists right now, because there hadn't really been a comprehensive look at it in quite a long time, but also to think about some areas of the village that needed redevelopment. That block, particularly the building on the rock, has been nearly empty for a good long while, has been on the market for a long time without any takers, and those sites have become substantially less valuable to all of us and to the community at large, both in terms of the services they offer as well as the tax revenue they present. So part and parcel of that, as you probably already also know, we were successful finally in achieving a state grant. It's actually federal money administered by the state of $1.51 million with a $750,000 match to us to produce a $2.25 million project to improve the streetscape along Manville Road between Tompkins up by the Shell station down to Grand Street and Memorial Plaza by Valvoline, and incorporating a new design for a park plaza, whatever it will turn out to be, at the end of Memorial Plaza where the war monuments are now sitting. And we'll, just to be clear, the war monuments will remain there. It's conceivable that it might be moved, although I think even that is unlikely. What we're hoping to do, and I think is almost certainly the case, is to close that elbow right-hand turn out of the commuter side of the lot that comes up onto the bridge, and to use that additional space as well as some space towards the parking area to create a new public space. We had a workshop here in this room last week with Jamie Maslin Larson, prominent landscape architect who is helping us with this project, and Phil Myrick, a planner and Pleasantville resident and member of our planning commission, who is a distinguished professional planner in his own right. So those guys are helping us tease out the various uses that the community is interested in having, and then leading towards a December 7 workshop that will be over at the Clinton Street Center, the beginning of thinking about what that space might look like.
And that one's also at 7?
7 o'clock.
December 7 at 7. Okay.
At 7.
Will also be posted on the village Facebook page, which I encourage you to follow if you don't already.
So all of that, much more detail on that is available, and I know I've discussed it with some of you folks. The project also involves streetscape improvements along Manville in that zone I mentioned, bumping out the sidewalks, improving the pedestrian walkability, reducing the width of the crosswalks with these bump outs, because on Manville at one point they're 5 and 6 lanes wide. The current plan calls for a planted median in the middle of Manville, in front of King's Crown, headed up towards Tompkins, both providing a landscape buffer as well as a place of refuge for pedestrians. All of the details of that are subject to change, but we have had a design for those kinds of changes stapled in the corner and ready to go for quite a few years, waiting only for the money. And now, thank you to the grant gods, the money has arrived. So,
and the island that you put in front of Rebecca Lane
Right.
there is
That's,
great.
yeah.
It's
right, and
creates
that's
a
that was
safer
just our
walkway.
project. Thank you, Jeff Econom, for
Yeah.
planning that out.
It actually
creates
added
a
some
safer
parking spots,
walkway,
too.
added
Yeah.
some parking
Yeah.
spots, and it looks really nice. so
Yeah, no, it's a big,
it's well
it's a
done.
big improvement. It's
We have a landscaping project for that island as well. That's going to
Okay.
happen in the spring. We're going to do a
Planting.
primarily a native plant sort of habitat garden that will have an educational function as well. I'm working
Nice.
with Carolyn Ramsey from the Garden Club on that project.
Great.
So good stuff popping up all over, and happy to get comments on along the way. But the aspect of it that I think is of significance to you guys in particular is that we have both going on right now and anticipated in the coming, say, 2 years, some significant new housing stock, mostly in the form of apartments. Toll Brothers, as you already know, out on Washington Avenue, the former Baker Properties site, is 68 units, at 61 townhomes, full market value, 7 affordable. Those are selling briskly. I think we've had 9 closings already. When we went through the approvals process for that, the studies suggested that that might generate, I think, 28 school kids. Patty, am I remembering right? Something in that realm. And at least so far, correct me if you guys have seen something different, it would appear that the demographics of the typical buyer will perhaps not produce that many. So.
Yeah, have you gotten any, Mary? Any?
Just inquiries, high school age inquiries.
Right. I mean, it's those units are going for a lot of money, and
high taxes.
Very high taxes. Right. So they are. So far, they have been attracted to folks who are downsizing from a bigger single-family home, who are happy to get out of an old house and not have to deal with the ongoing fixings that
Stairs, they're one of
entail all
the few
that.
developments
Right.
that has master bedrooms on the first floor, half of them.
okay.
Right.
So that's a huge
That's
advantage.
attractive,
Yeah,
too.
it is.
And a great
Older.
thing. So what I would say about that project is it also, as you perhaps know, enabled us all collectively to solve a really serious stormwater problem that existed for the folks on the lower side of Washington Avenue with water washing across. So a lot of good aspects to that, and it certainly has ratified the vibrancy of the Pleasantville real estate market to see those units selling as briskly as they have, and to see some actual price increases going up. So my sense of it is the toll is actually building them somewhat faster than they thought they might. Toll builds them as they are bought, both, I guess, as a cash flow process, but also because they allow people to make some modifications based on what they want. So,
Looked like about a half a dozen. I drove up there. Lights are on. People seem to be occupying about a half a dozen.
Yeah, and I think roughly,
One side is.
roughly half the units are either built or are in process. So, lots going on there. On Washington Avenue, the project at the former Maher Funeral Home site is completed. A few punch list items, but is leasing up. That is 16 units with offices on the first floor, parking on site. And then the project of the former Try and Buy site is also proceeding. As you can see, steel has risen out of the ground. That project is, and I may be corrected at a modest level, but I think I've got the numbers about right. Something like 9,000 square feet of retail on the first floor, subdividable in various ways, and then 23 apartments upstairs. And those are a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, high ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows in the front. It's going to be a rather different and I think great addition to the housing stock, the rental housing stock, which at the moment Pleasantville has not had a lot of. I would not anticipate that those units are going to be highly likely to be generating a lot of kids, although you guys may have a better sense of that. These are rental apartments that are not enormously big, so.
And how many units was that?
23.
Yeah, 23 it was, yeah.
I wanted to just
And
comment
first
on
floor
that.
retail.
Right.
And first floor retail.
I wanted to comment on that development and also the potential for the development over on the Rock that Peter mentioned before. the developer on Washington Avenue has, it's related companies, I don't know if it's the same people, but may be involved in that project. But one of the things that they're doing on Washington Avenue, and I'm told that they want to do it there as well, is although they have enough on-site parking to meet our, they have no parking waivers on Washington Avenue, they're meeting all of our parking requirements, they're designating 3 or 4 spots and making a deal with Zipcar in the hopes of encouraging people who live there to come and own perhaps 1 car instead of 2 or 3. You own 1 car, and then when you need that second car, you can take the Zipcar to the grocery store or around town or wherever it is. So it's just, I thought it was an interesting initiative that on the private side they're working on that I think could be a real a help for our parking problem that we have here. Fewer cars, less parking needs. Not to mention the fact that those units are walking distance to the train, so people won't be buying spots in the train station lot or anything if they're walking to the train. So on the parking side, I think it's going to be helpful and good development.
Yeah, and that project has parking both below and behind
The try and buy.
the try and buy site. So that project has fulfilled all the parking requirements that are in our zoning. And I mean, one of the interesting discussions that
What about the
is-
one on the corner of Washington and Edgewood? They had
That
a
too.
parking lot.
Yes,
They're fully
Behind.
compliant as well.
fully compliant as well.
Okay.
Right.
Their parking is underneath on one side, near the village.
Right.
There's some underneath the building parking next to the office, and then there's also parking behind.
Okay.
So,
Then the Trusco building, or the?
Yeah,
The
across the
face
street,
across-
the
yeah.
old trust trust.
I just didn't want to lose that thought. One of the matters that we've discussed at some length and talked to our planners about is the near certainty that at some point, we don't know when, is it 5 years, is it 10 years, is it 20 years, the people's relationship with cars will be different. The car may drive you to the train station and drive itself home. I mean, that's already actually happening in a few places on a test basis. So one piece that's clear at the moment is that there is very significant demand and thus development interest in rental apartments near train stations. You see this going on all over the place, and with very significant interest on the part of developers. And we're seeing that as well here, and I think that's to a large extent what's driving some of what we've seen. A lot of the folks who have talked to me about being interested in renting those apartments are either young people without kids who are city commuters and are looking to live outside the expense of the city, but still in a place that actually has some nightlife and some activity. Restaurants, burns, etc., are all aspects of it that are of interest to them. And as Joe commented, it'll be interesting to see the point at which folks have potentially fewer cars, living more of an urban lifestyle in a village setting, especially if they have the confidence that when they need a car, they can get it. So stay tuned. Of course, in big cities at the moment, people are renting cars on an app by the hour to go whatever it is they do, go to the grocery store, bring home the case of seltzer, and then leave it and not have to pay for the care and maintenance of a car. So the project at 98 Washington, the long moribund building across the street from the firehouse, tortured, horrifying history, was at the end of 2016 purchased by the county from the banks that held it in foreclosure, and then they flipped it immediately to an affordable housing developer along with a subsidy, and that project is being redeveloped for 14 affordable units. Those units will be at a lower level of affordability, I think 50% of the average median income. Most of the others are at 80%. From our standpoint, the progress between that transaction at the end of last year and November 13 of this year seems pretty darn slow, but they have made some progress. A lot of work has to be done in the building. All the fireproofing has to be replaced. Stuff that had been done is of no value at this point because it's been exposed so long to the weather, but fair to say, Patty, the county is, I hope, keeping the heat on these guys to actually execute this project that the county has sunk a lot of money into?
We've called over and they are aware of, the lack of progress, but I don't know, how engaged they are in seeing it through at this point. I don't know.
So at any rate, I do know that an initial building permit for some of the preparatory work had to be done. They've been back and forth to planning. They have an architect on the job. So the hoped for result is that the building will be cleaned up, fixed. I think the intention was to change the facade and make it a better looking building, and then repopulate it with what would be 14 apartments that are on the small side. So amid that, as you see, as you drive around, we've had lots of houses being renovated or expanded. Here and there, and a new house being built, but there aren't too many places to build new houses. So I think if Robert Hughes, our building inspector, were here, he would say that things are extremely busy with all kinds of stuff going on. But I think, at least from the standpoint of the village board, some of this development, Toll being the near-term example, will be the biggest shot in the arm to the tax base since the country club of 30 some odd years ago. I say shot in the arm, neither your board nor ours has to spend more money unless we have more demands on our services. What it means with additional people paying significant taxes is everybody else pays a little less, and it spreads the burden across more people. So that's the goal we have in mind. The development we have going on downtown is partly tax base related, but also partly related to the reality that our downtown vibrancy, which we have been fortunate to sustain in many ways, is going to depend on some influx of some new folks. Without question, Emily and I've had this conversation about what the future of retail may look like, and it depends where you go. Some people are saying there will be no stores, that the world will be all about service. But certainly we're in a circumstance right now with the Burns being a great cultural anchor, as well as the many other cultural things that go on in Pleasantville, Arc Stages, Axial, musical things. We are experiencing a big uptick in the restaurant world. The former Magic Walk is being renovated right now as a Greek restaurant. Pub Street opened in the former Iron Horse Grill train station building. The former Thirsty Scholar is being renovated as a taqueria. A taco, sort of a high-end taco place. I believe I'm correct in saying it's the folks who also run, is it Cafe 10510 in Briarcliff?
Right. 10510, it's called.
10510, yeah. So.
And then there's also the
Burley.
the bowl.
Burley's building, Pizza Hut. The Pizza Hut side.
The Playa Bowl place.
Yeah, but the bowl
right,
thing.
The Playa Bowl place is opening up in the former, right next to
the
Photo Works.
Works.
It's a, smoothies and fruit bowls and salads and the like. That's opening up soon. And we understand that the first floor of the Early Gallagher building, the former Pizza Hut site, is likely also to be a new restaurant. So after a little dip in the number of restaurants, Vela Kitchen was the first in the new one. O'Connor's is now open in the former Michael's. All this activity going on, we're seeing a whole lot of restaurant activity. So, what that means, of course, on the parking front is that the problem never stops. It just changes hour to hour. Have I missed
Again,
anything?
a good problem to have if
Development world,
people are frequenting these restaurants.
Right. So,
That's a good problem to have.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is that all right? Thank you. All right, so going back to it, if you look at the master plan, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what you did in the master plan is you highlighted certain areas that could go to 4 stories, and then decided to start small, right, and do one specific area to see sort of how that worked, and that area was the Memorial Plaza area that you outlined earlier, correct?
That is true. The master plan, as I commented, discussed the possibility of 4 stories on Wheeler, discussed the possibility of 4 stories on the track side of Washington.
Right.
But, so nothing about the master plan implies intent to do that. It simply explores the planning implications of it and puts it on the table as something that folks
But it
thought was a
highlights certain
possibility.
areas where it would be possible, potentially.
Right.
Okay.
Right, I mean, it'd be possible anywhere, whether we want to do
Sure,
it
sure,
is a whole
sure.
other matter.
All right, so by my count, taking all these numbers and adding them up, that's 121 new units. Residential. The 68, the 16, the 23, the 14. And what would be great to have, and I was here when we had the whole conversation about the country club, and I remember, all sorts of community members coming out and saying, oh, this is going to destroy the schools, we're going to have so many students, it's going to be a huge problem, we won't have the room for them, and that didn't happen, and in fact, the amount of students that were predicted never came to fruition were actually a lot less. So I know how these conversations can go and how people can get hyped up, et cetera, but I do think it's important as we, add these developments to track them and really have a sense of what sort of impact they do or don't have when it comes to the
yes, for
school.
sure.
So when we're going forward, talking about new development, we have more numbers, more understanding of what may attract and what may not. And it'd be great to actually get a formal list of, here are the apartments, and here's the amount of students that were predicted
Estimates. Right.
by the experts.
So in the case of Toll, we have, and you probably also have that prediction of the number of school kids, are happy to give you that. In the case of projects like the project to try and buy, there isn't any such study because that was built as of right, and there
Okay.
was no
Need to do it.
Indeed, that could have been built like that 30 years ago.
Okay.
So the only time a study like that is triggered is when you go through a request for a change of zoning or significant variances
For planning, okay.
for a plan. When a project is as of right, you can do it without any of that. So that said, I think you're absolutely right. It will be great to know what, for example, you start to see in terms of stool kids being generated out of these projects. And at the same time, will, I think, be interesting to see what that influx of new taxpayers does to your budget and ours in terms of the overall tax burden on the community.
So for a potential development on the Rock, that would be probably a zoning change?
Depends. I mean, we've just made a zoning change that allows 4 stories, so we'll have to see what they come back with
Okay.
as a proposal. Again, social engineering is certainly an inexact science. I think it is, from my standpoint and from my discussions with lots of other folks in lots of other communities, most of the apartments that are being built are not either by dint of their location and physical form and their price all that likely to generate a lot of kids. Will they generate some? Sure. Could we be wrong? Absolutely.
What about the one on the corner of Edgewood and Washington?
16 units.
Yeah. he
No,
mentioned
but
that.
was that an as of right as well as the,
It was as of right, yeah.
that was
I mean,
as
there
of
might have
right
been
as
some
well. So there was
modest
no
things.
study done on
No
that
study
one,
done
right?
on that.
Okay.
And honestly, the study, the toll project is one where it is relatively easy for the demographers to go back and find similar kinds of projects in other settings. A 16-unit building in downtown Pleasantville, it's probably a little more of a shot in the dark to say, what does that generate?
And because these are rentals, Shane, also, there's no way to track them. Like with the Toll Brothers, you can track deeds as they're recorded, right? And see. A little bit harder in Westchester County because Westchester County uses a name index rather than a block and lot index. But you can track, if you have the seller's name, you can track those sales. You can't track rentals.
Renters.
Right.
So.
We'll keep an eye on them through
Yeah.
their addresses because unlike a lot of other communities around it, we are not decreasing in enrollment. And just keeping an eye on class size, keeping an eye on our resources will be something it's a tough lift in this era of a tax cap. I remember reading a statistic that said 24.6% of municipalities were able to go above it, but only 0.9% of school districts because it's a direct vote by people, and if they're
Right.
angry with the rest of the world, so it's a, you know, they tend to take it on the one thing they can like vote on. So we are aware of that, and we are thrilled that, I mean, we all saw Westchester Magazine. It's great that we're one of the places that people want to come and live and be here, and it's terrific, but we're not losing enrollment, so we're going to keep an eye on all the class sections and
So
sizes.
just to put a point on that, the 2% tax cap doesn't matter how many taxpayers we have, doesn't matter how much
Correct.
new development has been
We don't get more
created,
money.
you still can't spend more money,
Correct.
even though you have more people to serve.
And I think that's an
So,
important point for
right.
people to remember,
Yeah.
just levels the.
But
resident.
what I would say is, you know, the popularity of Pleasantville as a destination in the real estate world is great testimony to
Right.
all that you guys have done and all that our residents have done over a long period of time. And the fact that this place, by dint of its sort of social history as well as its physical form, has been a great place to live and will continue to be so. I will say with some optimism that folks who talk to me about wanting to, say, rent an apartment near the train station here are drawn to it for exactly those same reasons that families of 4 kids are drawn here, even though they're at a different point in their lives.
Right.
You know, the issue of maintaining vibrancy in a downtown is complicated in the current era. I mean, you look around us, including in places that in relatively recent years were very, very vibrant. I mean, it's just the loss of Borders in Mount Kisco, for example, which now must be, what, 5-6 years ago. Modell's took a significant piece of that space, but 2/3 or more of that building is vacant, and it's hard to imagine what tenant would take it because, you know, big stores like that are contracting, not growing. So I say all of that with some modest confidence that we've got the seeds of a real 21st century village here that will reinforce all that we love about it, but updated a bit in ways that may make it viable for our downtown commercial sector still to remain vibrant. So knock on wood.
Okay.
Anyone further on
I
that?
don't think this is wood.
Thanks, Peter.
Rich Sarfati built this. I think it's wood.
Knock on the front.
All right. Update of joint agreement for facilities use. Who's going to take that one?
I'll speak to that
All right.
just for a minute. Thank you. Mara, you-
Do you want to see?
No, it's fine.
Pull it out.
Does it come out?
It can come out, it can come out.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. We have a joint use agreement. We're working on an expired agreement right now, and that's not unusual. Our joint use agreement sets forth the terms and conditions by which the village and the school district can share and use each other's facilities. But over the years, we've added certain things, you know, in our programs, such as the Panther Club and a Winter's Farmers Market, and there's been a need to look at this agreement and to add in those elements that, you know, that we're currently working with from a programmatic point of view. But since this is a policy document, the superintendent and I thought that we should just craft a new agreement for the board to review. And it would probably save a lot of time and energy if we sat down and just hashed out all of the things that we know administratively we have to deal with respect to the agreement, put it all out there, shape it, you know, in such a way that you can look at it and hopefully just, you know, pass on it so we can then move forward with the new agreement. So we will be working on that. I think we can probably hammer something out within the next 6 to 8 weeks and get it back before our boards to, you know, to look at and put back into something operational. But we're working on an expired agreement. No one's been harmed by it. It works fine. It just needs to be updated. Okay.
Does it work for you guys?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Patty.
Got the right pair on the job, I would say.
We were bored. We just figured
Something to do.
Two Queens girls.
There you go, Mary.
Why don't you hold on to that mic, Patty? The next item is the update on turf management, fields, and playground improvements. Happy to hear you guys have made big investments over on your side, the new turf field and all of that. As you know, we instituted, with Patty's leadership a year or so ago, a new turf management program, brought in a consultant, bought quite a bit of equipment, have been investing quite a bit more in trying to keep the grass growing and green.
I have to say, it's held up
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
nicely
Yeah, thank you.
during this football season so far, so.
It's, congratulations incidentally on your extremely successful teams in all sports.
Cross-country and-
From a turf management standpoint, I sometimes wish people could not get in the playoffs for a year. Could we-
You know, I was just on the side, I was walking here, a train just, a community member got off and he recognized who he was, but he said, hello, and then he turned around and came back, great football season. So to all our supporters out there, thank you.
So at any rate, on our side, we have both changed our strategy and also investing quite a bit more effort in turf management. We're in the midst of working on irrigation in the fields that are not currently irrigated, and have been looking at new playground equipment as well. You want to touch on that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Mayor. Thank you. And yes, thank you for the compliments about Parkway Field. We really spent an extraordinary amount of effort, labor, as well as money to try to bring that back to life. And we've done it with a combination of increasing our watering there. We've brought in better equipment to maintain the field. We've met very frequently with an expert in turf management, a fellow named Bob Schreiner that we were introduced through from Colleen Griffin Wagner. She had a contact, and he's been just a home run for us.
A lot more aerating.
Yeah,
A lot more aerating.
we have
of
a
the
new
planting seed and.
process called
It's like a grass
aerating.
whisperer.
We've
Yeah.
overseeded.
Grass whisperer, yes.
Yeah, he's done a great job, and you know, for it to be green this time of year is pretty impressive. So
Very, yeah.
and we have.
Well, and limiting use on it
Right.
has definitely
Right.
helped as well.
And fortunately, you know, I think the clubs have signed on to that, you know, alternating to the backfields for practice and just leaving the game field available for games. And we've been able to force a little bit of a rest period that way. So we're happy with it. But as the mayor mentioned, going forward, we are also investing in irrigation systems now for Roselle Park as well as Soldiers and Sailors. So you're going to see some substantial improvements there in the next couple of years as well. We also have tasked our Parks and Rec Advisory Board with the charge of designing new playgrounds in all of our parks, because we feel that, you know, not only for the benefit of keeping on top of the ADA laws that are in effect for playgrounds, we also need to update our equipment. So what we'll be having is a number of probably planning charrettes for the community to come in to talk about what they'd like to see in these neighborhood parks, what age groups are appropriate for certain play equipment, and what we should be designing. So we are making
need to
some.
design one for fifth graders.
Yeah, maybe for the fifth graders. That's a great up.
Near the school.
You're right.
So we'll be spending that effort in our next capital plan. You'll see that come out in our next budget, that we are looking to make some substantial improvements to all of our parks and playground facilities.
So all of that is all good news. It doesn't overcome the fundamental problem that
We have limited space.
we haven't got any more fields. They're just a little, they're better than they were, which is obviously a high goal. But all of us are at various points in the crosshairs of various constituencies who wish there were more opportunities for more fields. Certainly has periodically the idea of turfing the main field down at Parkway gets brought up, as well as completing the lights, and that is a probably $3 million venture that is just not in the cards in the current environment.
Do we have some kind of arrangement with PACE for some of the, oh, sorry. I'm not aware exactly what the status is of our relationship with PACE, but my understanding is that some of the teams practice on their
But
fields.
you guys or the one with John Barrowline's the one with the strongest.
The school district, Pace University, we're very lucky that they do allow, when it meets their schedule, for us to go and use their facility. Again, football is a different animal altogether because it's heavy equipment induced, but we do get to play there, and we're grateful to them. But Pace is a private university, and it can choose or not choose to, but we take their student teachers, their nursing students, and when they were under construction, we allowed them to use our turf field for some of their teams as well. So we really do appreciate the reciprocal relationship we have with them.
That's great. That seems like
It's
a great
not on
opportunity.
a regular basis, though.
No,
It's-
not at all.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's on a,
And there's
Ad
no,
hoc.
there's no
Ad
written
hoc,
agreement
yeah.
either. It's,
No.
It's really the relationship that
more
our
of a, can you
athletic
fit us
director
in?
has with their athletic director.
100% right.
If it gets higher than that, actually,
It won't work.
probably ends.
No, Larry's 100% right.
You're right.
Lawyers will say no.
Good point, you're right. Good point.
So the forecast for the future is uncertain as far as that relationship is concerned.
I think it's just catch as catch can.
Okay.
I mean,
It's
part
a
of
good
the problem-
relationship.
I think that's a
I
good
think,
point,
like-
though, Larry. If we try and formalize it and say, could we use it on a more regular basis, that might implode the whole thing.
And I'm afraid the grim reality is that the times when we most need it are the times everyone is most busy and can least afford to give up field time.
Right.
So, I just mentioned the turfing issue as an example of the reality that we obviously have a long and ongoing list of capital needs: water systems, sewer systems, stormwater, buildings, etc. And you guys have your own version of the same. The idea of a major investment in the multi-million-dollar range feels a bit hard to imagine in the current environment, especially with the tax cap. That said, we also find ourselves in a position where we may have some increased flexibility with retiring some debt to think about what our options may be.
Which is exactly what we did when
Right.
we did the turf fields.
Fields, right.
We were coming off some debt and basically made it budget neutral, which I think allowed us to get that bond passed.
Right.
Because that was a few $1 million as well. So timing is everything.
Timing is everything, although, obviously mindful of if we could retire debt and actually reduce
Sure.
taxes as a result, that's the goal we would have. But by the same token,
Well, I'll let
Go
you
ahead.
finish.
There's
and then
benefit to that as well,
Yeah.
yeah.
right, I think, as I have often said, the only thing that's worse than living in an environment where you pay high taxes is getting lousy services to boot. And that certainly is not the case in Pleasantville, and it's our collective obligation to make sure it stays that way, so.
Right, so let me just kind of take this back a little bit. So you guys, thank you for mentioning that we've upgraded our facilities like the field, but over the last several years also, we've redone every gym floor, for example. There's a lot of other resources that the community uses outside of the fields,
Right, not just the field.
inside as well. One of the things, going back to what Angela was talking about, when we were coming off the debt from the middle school, there were things we had to do, like replace a roof for the middle school, but we looked at replacing the fields, improving the situation when it came to stands at the field, so you could actually not just stand somewhere, but potentially sit somewhere. So there was a lot of things that were improved, and we were able to do it without increasing taxes. Obviously, had we not done them, we could have potentially lowered taxes, but we wouldn't have upgraded or had some of the facilities that we
Right.
have now. So, you guys are coming off some debt next year, correct?
Yes.
So you're going from like $1.9 million to $1.2 million, about $800,000.
See, he knows the numbers because he's at all of your meetings.
So, there.
Are you suggesting how we should
Well,
spend that,
no,
Mr.
well, so
McGaffey?
one of the things that we did, I'll just, is we had community meetings and there were community conversations about, what priorities were in the community. And I was wondering if you guys were thinking about those types of meetings or any sort of discussions where things were prioritized.
We have those ongoing all the time, discussions about prioritizing water main projects, sewer projects, storm sewer water projects are the kinds of things that it's our collective obligation to decide about and make sure they happen. Certainly not something that is a matter that, as my kids have repeatedly told me, why do you want to spend hours talking about that? Right?
No, but
But my point being, we have some significant capital investments that are ongoing over time, and when you have some debt that gets retired, there's an obvious interest in doing stuff that has immediate appeal. The world is different in some way. We just got something new, as opposed to the decidedly less interesting report that, for example, we're confronting right now. We're likely to have to spend about $1 million on the pool, at the conclusion of which it will look no different. So, those are tough moments to decide whether to spend that kind of money. So, yes,
Right,
certainly
like
willing to-
replacing a roof on a school isn't flashy, it's not,
Right. So,
but it has to be done.
a very
So
big
this
percentage of our
maintenance stuff
capital
has to
cost
be done.
isn't flashy at all.
Right,
and
it
yet,
just has to be done.
The reality
No,
that,
but it'd be interesting even to see like a chart,
Yeah.
these are things, this is when
So
they come due,
we'll be
this is
doing
the
a
type
capital
of thing.
planning. We go through a capital planning process every year, and as you know, our esteemed leader, Ms. Dwyer, has threatened, apparently with some truth behind it, to retire on us. And so we're in the midst
You don't have to accept the retirement.
I've often wondered what happens when you say no.
You can still leave.
We are in the midst, the 5 of us are in the midst of an interview process and have winnowed down quite a stack of applicants to a much smaller number, and we'll be starting the second round shortly, with the hope and expectation that we will select someone to be Patty's successor, and that person will be able to work overlapping with Patty for some period of time for that transition. So a lot going on our side that will be both a great opportunity as well as a complicated time to be doing things like long-range planning, but we will do it.
Yeah, because in a lot of ways, it's a lot more difficult for you, I think, in some ways, to engage the community because the community doesn't vote on your budget. So they like to come to
I know
complain
that's
to us
a great
because
bone of
they're voting on it
contention.
and they have, some ability to affect it.
Would you do
Well-
that, would you do this, do you do your strategic planning in like a work session of a board meeting, or do you envision it as being a separate, like you're having the master plan, you had the master plan meetings
Right.
at Clinton Street, and you're having another one on December 7th? Would this be an additional meeting, or would it be part of your
You mean the
normal
decision about
process?
what new capital
Yeah, your
projects
your
are-
capital
I
plan.
mean, it's part of our normal budget.
budget.
It's part of our budget process, and as I say,
So it'll be part of those work sessions?
Right, and the vast majority of that is the discussion about trucks and snow plows and water lines and all that kind of stuff. So, and we're in the circumstance, you probably are too, you ask all of your department heads for a list of must-have in the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, in order to keep the trains rolling. Would like to have in the next 3, 5, 10 years in order to maintain a modern department, and then the last list of things that would really move the needle in terms of either the quality of what we do or the range of services we can offer. So we're going to be trying to fold all that into the fact that we're going to have a $2.25 million capital project going on Manville Road, blessedly significantly funded by the state, and at the same time be discussing the evolution of Memorial Plaza, the reconfiguration of traffic, and the possible decanting of parking to somewhere else. That's a lot on our plate at the moment. So I say that only to say, obviously we're engaged in the discussion all the time, and we're happy to talk to you about it too, about our joint needs as far as recreation is concerned. But I think my overall sense of our next 18 months is an awful lot of stuff going on, a lot of financial strength and optimism for the future, but we'll be drinking from a fire hose to keep it all properly managed.
Is your portion of the grant or your matching funds part of next year's budget?
Well,
Or do we know that yet?
We have some decisions to make about how much to take out of cash and how much could conceivably be bonded. As you know from sitting through our planning discussions, we've been seeking to move to an environment where we pre-fund capital account and pay cash for things that historically the village has bonded. Certainly that falls in the category of dump trucks and stuff like that. I think the decision about the balance between cash and bond on that $750,000 is partly going to depend on what else is going on, what else happens on the parking side, and whether our overall plan for Manville and Memorial Plaza turns out potentially actually to somewhat exceed that original budget, in which case we have to decide whether to apply more money to it or trim our sales.
Just,
Would you characterize that any differently, Patty?
No, we won't know until we finish really our design report and our planning process, how far we're going to take the civic space, component of the project.
I mean, at our workshop last week, and in conversation with Jamie and Phil, the professionals who are leading this process, I think everybody felt clear that this was an opportunity to take a rather misguided civic space, a little sliver of a park lit with important war monuments in a rather dispiriting location and a very difficult pedestrian experience. And although we are hemmed in by all kinds of practical realities, including the demand for parking, the desire not to lose any, and the cost of everything, I think we're all collectively of the view that you start with a vision and figure out resources from there, at least at the start. And all of that leads me, again, speaking personally, to the sense that we may end up with a bigger civic space that I think benefits the community for generations to come, but is going to cost us some more money to build it and to figure out what to do with the parking spaces it might dislodge.
so just 2 points. One slightly different than the other. Going back to parking, are we ever going to look at potentially opening it up to people who live in the town but not in the village?
Well, at the moment, we have a waiting list for parking permits of folks who live here and work here. On rare occasions when we haven't had that, we've invited at a somewhat higher cost folks who are outside the village and don't work here to buy permits, but that's not the circumstance we're in right now.
Okay.
I mean, it's not our goal, other than the trouble with commuter parking. Obviously, it's an important thing. It's a big piece of what drives people to live here because they can park and take the train. But you end up with cars that are parked for 10 or 12 hours, stagnant. We have these overlapping needs for folks who want to come to the movies, folks who want to come and eat to restaurants, folks who would like to shop in stores, and ongoing conflict between those overlapping uses. So,
I mean, our best piece of real estate is a parking lot.
Yeah.
To a great
Right.
extent, and using this new civic space, I think is going to use that a lot better for the community than what it is now. I mean, we all need parking, but I think, if we could do with less parking and more civic space, I think the community would enjoy that a lot more.
One of the community members' plan was to do away with the entire
I
parking
know,
lot.
I love that. I know, I know. That's not
They had this
happening, by the
grand
way, so-
idea of what to do with the space. And let's just get rid of all the
Yeah.
parking. And it was like, whoa.
as I have said to some of you, a friend of mine who was the mayor upstate at one point said, "I'm not gaining weight, I'm just developing a very thick skin."
Yeah.
As soon as you talk about moving somebody's, I had a conversation with someone yesterday who still holds it against us that he was dislodged from commuter parking in the lot behind the bookstore, which at one point was a commuter lot, and we changed
Right.
it, gosh, 10 years or so ago to transient. But, it was, it's perfectly understandable. Every group has a different set of goals and needs, and they're all completely legitimate. So we're trying to, as John said, put 10 pounds of community in a 5-pound space.
The other thing I just thought was interesting, we actually a couple of years ago looked at trying to create accounts so we didn't have to take out bonds also over time. So if, for example, you have a turf field and you know that in 10 years it's going to expire, you want to replace it with another one, could we set up a capital fund and just put money in from the budget every year and replace it? Turns out to do that on our end, you have to have a resolution put on the ballot for a vote to establish it, and for how much can go in it and for how long. And then when that time comes up, the community has to vote then to spend it on what they agreed to spend it on to begin with. So you could be in a situation.
This is why we did not run for the school board.
But I just want you guys to, so in looking at different ways to do things through a budget, it's very difficult to do, because the community 10 years from now could say, no, we don't want that to be spent on a field.
I mean, in our case, we set up reserve accounts. There's a class of account that's set up for a reserve account, and it can only be used for that purpose. It's a big to-do to get the money out of it for something else. But as so long as it's used for the stated purpose of the account that it was set up for,
we couldn't use it until it was voted on again by the community.
But about your question of reaching out to the community and getting a sense of what their priorities are, I mean, one of the things that we're trying to improve just more broadly is our communication with all the residents, and the Facebook page has been sort of the first major step of that, but we're trying to do other things as well. And so, trying to, in a slightly more user-friendly manner, communicate, this is something that we're discussing. That said, and sometimes I contact people individually to say, we're going to talk about this tonight. You might want to show up because you've been bugging me about this, for the last month.
Right.
That doesn't mean that they always show up.
Of course
but,
not.
True. Yeah.
They just like to bug you. We get the same thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think we're in a strong position, but there's any one of the categories in which we could spend money: downtown improvements, parking, recreational programs, more fields, etc. Alone could spend everything we have.
Sure.
The same circumstance.
No, just in terms of priorities.
Right. So it's a balance, and we're trying to strike that. I do think that and as I said, and it's not meant to be flip. We are going to be drinking from a fire hose here, with a lot going on and a new administrator, and who knows? We may need Dwyer LLC to be
I did want to mention too, I don't know if everybody on the school board has had a chance, but Noreen, who was in our finance department, has now sort of moved to the administrative department and is going to be helping us getting into the next village administrator. So I just wanted to recognize her. She did an amazing job in finance working with Mary, and now she's going to be moving over and working with our new village administrator. So I think it's important that...
And she's on her listening to her early, so I...
Yes. I appreciate her being here, and I just wanted everyone to meet her and know that we've done that in hopes of helping the transition also and having a smooth transition.
Thanks for introducing her.
Yeah, that's important.
Thanks for being here.
Noreen Regan will be the assistant to the administrator.
And she's been deputy treasurer.
Yeah, so
and both a person with great professional skills, but also great people skills too. So
Great.
all right, legislative and fiscal concerns. I mentioned my the discussion about the state and local taxes question with the threat at the federal level to change that, and I think with the agreement of my colleagues, we're going to pass a resolution tonight at the request of the New York Conference of Mayors, looking for unanimity on that front. I don't know whether there's...
forward that resolution, and maybe we can pass something similar tomorrow.
Yeah, happy to do so. I don't know whether, is the Westchester School Board Association involved at all? And
Yes.
Superintendents, right?
Yes, and we had a whole delegation of superintendents met with Nita Lowy this morning.
Right.
We identified some, up in the western part of New York, some elected representatives on the federal level who are in support of this. So we reached out to our state organization as to what we can do to build awareness. But yes.
It's, I mean, who knows what it all means, but, there's very, very serious risk. So the other takeaway that...
Well, it's double taxation.
Sure.
It's
Exactly.
I mean, there's two things, double taxation and regional cost index. The fact that we live in a more expensive area means that we have more, get less,
right,
and continue to subsidize the rest of the country more.
For lots...
That was the really
Country or
interesting,
state?
Mary forwarded us a
Country and
couple of...
state.
Yeah, right.
Mary forwarded us a couple of
Yeah, I have it.
talking point
Literally everybody and their mother, yeah.
documents. And I thought one of the more interesting things is New York State alone sends, what, $48 billion more to Washington than we get back.
Right, 41 is the number I heard today, but it's a
We are
mega number.
40-something
Yes,
billion.
yeah, right.
So we already subsidize a lot of the rest of the country, so this is just a further, we pay more and get less.
Well, and part of that, I mean, it goes in a smaller scale, it comes into play in New York State as well, where the environment elsewhere in the state is very different. It's easy to look at a place like Pleasantville in Westchester County overall as a place of substantial affluence, and obviously it is. And yet when you talk about a $100,000 salary in lots of places in the country, that feels like modest wealth, and a $100,000 salary in environs like this, although enviable in many, many ways, does not put families on easy street.
For a family of 4 or 5?
I mean, it's interesting to
Well,
know,
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot at our school board meetings about the Alice Report, which is done by the United Way. And they put poverty in this area at almost $78,000 for a family of 4. So in the rest of the country, that would be $23,850.
Below that.
And it's very significantly driven.
And they're subsidizing the people.
Very significantly driven by housing costs.
Right.
And of course, housing costs are.
And property taxes, and
Right, so.
which they expect us to pay because we make more money, so we have to pay more property taxes to pay for our own schools, as opposed to getting state subsidies for the schools. That's what we look at.
One version of the House plan, I think, proposed to maintain the state and local tax deduction, but cap it at $10,000, which in lots of places in the country is a threshold that would never be met.
Right.
And for folks in those places, perfectly understandably, they're inclined to think, well, if your taxes are more than that, that's because you've chosen to live in some grander fashion than we have. And yet, the reality of that in a major metropolitan area is quite different than it is in smaller places, and you see that played out in New York State as well.
Well, they can't fathom, living in a 3-bedroom, 1.5-bath house and paying $20,000 in taxes. But that's a reality here for some people, so.
It is?
I mean,
that's property taxes.
You might have had the experience I've had when I thought, gosh, the house insurance seems awfully high, I'll get another quote, and went to USEA and they said, really? No. How big is the house? No. We can't insure. Okay. So a couple of other points to be made. One aspect of the legislative priority session I went to today was culminating in a vote on 30 some odd different possible initiatives to identify the 10 that would be the New York Conference of Mayors' primary legislative goals. And it's interesting to note, as was the case for me last year, my 10 were not the same as the ones that won. Not surprisingly, just for example, one issue that's a major issue, and blessedly we don't have it, is so-called zombie buildings, where a property has been abandoned and the community is both unable to do anything about it but unable to get any tax revenue out of it. That ended up as a yes because of the fact that it's a significant issue in so many other places and clearly should be addressed. But there are a bunch of issues that are on our on our radar screen, both at the village level and the Westchester Municipal Officials Association. I'm the legislative chair at the moment, and I would have to say with some regret that out of the 15 or so items we took to Albany last February, 13 of them had been on the list for 4 or 5 years with no action. And I think, there are a few of those that are simply going to remain there. Reform of the scaffolding law, reform of
Wick's law.
The New York
Triborough,
State
they're just,
School,
right.
the New York State School Board has a similar, they have just resolutions that sunset and they just re-up
like
again after
punch.
5 years. And nothing's really changed on them.
So, at the Westchester municipal officials level, and certainly at our level, I think the idea is to focus on a couple of things that do actually appear to be potentially achievable, and to focus on a couple of things that are in the wind in Albany that we very much do not wish to happen, and see if we can throw enough live bodies in front of the bus. So.
It often does come down to human sacrifice.
That's right. was afraid you would say that, Lou. So,
The skin keeps getting thicker.
and I will say, the report, you may have seen the latest reports from the controller, that it would appear that the next New York State budget is going to have to close something like $4 billion gap. And so the result of that is
And that's before any changes in
who knows what it all
federal
means.
funding.
So,
That's before those potential changes.
just to counter the handcuffs that you live on because of your regulations about how you can spend money, the increase in school aid last year from the year before was itself about 1.5 times the entire aid program to municipalities. So amazingly, what do we get, Patty? $48,000 in state aid, something like that?
In our per capita?
Yeah,
About $48,000.
in the so-called AIM program, and that number has skyrocketed up exactly 0 since 2009. There has not been.
You go
There
first.
has not been a single increase in aid to municipalities, not even 1% since 2009.
You should know that last year was the first year, actually, since the 2008-9 fiscal year, where we actually got more. So there was a dip in our funding.
Sure. No, I know what you all deal with.
Yeah.
So, and of course,
6-figure dips.
Yeah.
And it is part of the state constitution that they're supposed to provide a sound and basic education. So it's incumbent upon the state to provide funding for education.
so we're
Right,
at
but
the grid.
they're
We're
not
owed
going
actually
to-
millions of dollars.
But they don't
I know.
supply enough supplies, so teachers are buying them on their own, but now they're not going to
Well, now
allow
they
the
won't be able
teachers
Yes,
to.
that's proposed to be
won't be able
knocked
to
out
deduct
as a
that.
deduction.
Deduct
Yes,
that.
They won't be able to
Business
deduct
expense.
that.
So,
I will add one thing that we said to Nita Lowy this morning, and it's egregious on a lot of levels. The Individual with Disabilities Education Act required the federal government to support our children with disabilities at 40% when it was passed in 1974. The federal support for students with disabilities is only, it depends a little bit, but it falls between 16 and 19%. From the state down to our school district, it's between 7 and 9%. So again, the IDEA,
reimbursement on
that's
what
the
we spend.
reimbursement on, and these are our most fragile, the most vulnerable of children with incredible needs, and the level of resources and support is unbelievable that we're not getting. And it simply hammers communities that do the right thing.
That's right.
For kids.
Right.
And so it's
We share your pain.
We could easily bore our community
I know.
all night on this subject.
I
Perhaps
know.
we've said enough, but I do think the takeaway from all of that, I hope feels that way to all of you who are watching, is that I think it's fair to say from where I sit, you've got two boards that get it about the pincers that communities like ours find themselves in, and I don't mean to say that in any way to diminish the struggles of many other communities, and there are lots of places with a much greater need, but for a community that has so consistently worked hard to do the right thing on its own behalf and has only asked for its fair share, it's a source of frustration to me when I see how grants are doled out and when I see what happens in the budget slicing process, that we don't always, or perhaps hardly ever, see the real model of citizenship that exists here rewarded. So,
Well, and just like New York State sends way more money to the federal government than we get back, Westchester County sends way more money to the state than we get back in aid as
all right,
well.
so the 10 of us are going to go with paper bags
Yeah.
and stand in front of, in February and make our point.
Well, we've gone to Albany with the show me the money ties.
Didn't
You have to
help.
make sure they're less than $10
help.
or they can't accept them.
Oh dear. All right, any further comment on any of that? No. If we haven't completely sucked the air out of the room, is there any comment from the public? We would be more than happy to hear anybody who has any comment on any subject.
Unless we thoroughly depressed you.
All right? Please, come on up.
I
Take the podium.
We need to ask you to identify yourself, name and address. Welcome.
You will forgive me if it is not a relevant or appropriate question or
Forgiven
comment.
already.
So just send me in another direction if that needs to happen. My name is Susie Scher, and I am a new parent to, I'm not a new parent, I'm a parent who is new to the school system. I have a kindergartner. And so I should say, first and foremost, we've been extremely pleased with the Pleasantville schools. We live in a part of town, we actually don't live in town, so we are not village residents, but we are zoned for Pleasantville schools. And Mary, you and I spoke on the phone, I'm rearing my ugly head again, I'm sorry. I love that it is a walking district, and I really, really understand the value. We don't have a safe walk to school, and there are a lot of families in the district who don't have a safe walk to school, and I feel like
Where do you live?
there's,
Yeah, where do you live?
we live on 117. We are technically in Chappaqua, but the only people who think we live in Chappaqua is the post office. So we don't pay anything to Chappaqua, we
Right.
pay taxes.
So it's
to Mount Pleasant.
it's Chappaqua Post Office, the
Correct.
town of Mount Pleasant,
Right.
Pleasantville Schools.
So no entity wants to give me sidewalks. No one owns.
But you're not the first person that's come in
Of
front
course,
of this
oh, I'm
board.
sure that I'm
One
not.
of the issues that
Which
we
is what part of
have
my
is-
hesitation.
One of the issues we have is that if we were going to provide a safe place to school, it has to be done the right way.
Right.
And it gets extremely complicated. People have to give up property. We have to have, certain amounts of space. Because this is not the first comment. We've had people who live up Church Street. We've had people who live over by the golf course, where
Right.
there aren't the
Off-
proper sidewalks.
those
And
ones off
unless
of Locust
we can do
or
it right and
Lake
guarantee
Shore.
that a child will be safe,
Right.
we can't, we can't.
No, of course not.
We
So
can't do it.
are you in, there's a new-ish set of houses right where 117 splits off down to Greeley Avenue, is that
So we're just beyond there. So we're past Greeley, right?
past Greeley?
Smith Street, that
Yes.
funny little street.
Right.
They're in the town of Mount Pleasant.
I understand,
we-
I understand.
So we're just
where you are.
before there, so we're between Greeley and Smith.
Because there was somebody who lives in one of those new houses
Yeah.
just outside of Foxwood,
Right.
just beyond Foxwood.
Yep.
That was asking for a sidewalk as well. I
Yeah.
don't know where the border is.
And I don't know if the answer is a sidewalk, but I feel like there has to be something. I don't know if it's, busing. I don't know if it's being able to pick up kids in the car after school instead of having to park where there's no parking lot and somehow figure out a way between, 240 and 255 to, get ourselves to school to pick up our students on foot. I don't know if, so I don't know if the answer is to pick up the same way that we drop off. I feel like and I realize there's no good answer necessarily because of all of the conversations that have happened already tonight about there not being enough space and not being enough parking and not being enough resources and staff for all sorts of, but I feel like there has to be some answer that's better than, sorry, we're a walking district.
Well, there are places that you can park and walk safely to the school, though, right? I mean, you could park on my street, for example.
I can,
Yeah.
I can. It's not an ideal.
I mean, I'm all for sidewalks, like if I could be in charge of it and had that kind of power, I would, absolutely go that route, but I was just trying to clarify that one
So
piece of it.
one of the issues you have is that you live in the town of Mount Pleasant.
Right.
So we are the village board for the village of Pleasantville, and if we
Right.
wanted to put in a sidewalk somewhere, we couldn't put it in where you live.
I don't
We
think
own
Mount
that.
Pleasant can either because I'm on a state road.
Right, you're on a
That
state
might be
road, and
another,
there's
that's a
another
whole other
whole-
issue.
Well, the state
Right.
would be happy to have us do it at our expense and with their
Right.
rules.
So you're
Right.
on
No, I
Bedford
mean-
Road or you're on Smith?
I'm on
You're on
Bedford, I'm on
117.
117.
And then there's a sidewalk right when you get right at Pierce. I live off of Pierce Drive.
Right, but that's
so
like
that's
at least
but
a quarter of a
that
mile.
curve is a very
It's a scary
dangerous
curve. Like, I don't even do
Yeah.
it myself, like if
very
I go for a
dangerous
run,
curve.
I
That's
don't.
that's not really. I do see occasionally people walking that portion of the
crazy.
curve. It is quite dangerous.
Yeah.
Because there's actually the Skolnick House. They did finally cut back their bushes, Actually, I think the village did, or whoever, the
He's
state.
applying for a subdivision.
Well, they had to do something, so they cut, because there's, I know he is. But there's, the bushes come right out onto, like, there's not even a foot.
Right.
It's very dangerous. I
Can I
know.
suggest something, Mayor? I think what
Grab the mic there, Patty.
But yeah,
I think
always
a
just
call
drove.
maybe to Senator Murphy's office would be helpful. We have lots of issues in the northern end of the village, and we really do need a sidewalk network to continue up there. And I
Okay.
think we need a traffic light at that intersection that you're talking about.
At Greeley and,
So,
yeah.
you know, there are
At-
warrants.
There are constantly
At
accidents.
Smith?
Are there
At,
accidents?
No,
at-
Greeley.
Where
at-
Greeley
at-
and 117
Greeley and
come
117.
constantly.
Well, because 117 is coming around a curve.
Well, no
So
one,
it's
no
almost
one
like a
keeps to
blind-
the 35 mile an hour
Right. I
speed
mean,
limit.
it
I mean,
would
they
also
whip
help with-
around
with-
trucks and buses.
If we had a signal there, it would also help get those students down from Hillview and the other areas that they can't, you know, it'll give them a little bit of a timing opportunity to be able to cross. So there's a lot going on there, but I need some help from higher powers.
All right, so let's
because
talk about that, and
I think that would be
I have
helpful.
came back from Albany with a list to approach him about, so let's
And
prioritize a little bit.
As a lone citizen voice, I'd be happy to help in person or in writing and whatever is
Okay?
useful.
Be careful
Well,
what you
you're-
offer.
I know.
We're likely to take
You're
you
not
up on it.
alone. There are quite a
Yeah.
few people who have
Especially
reached
in
out to
northern
us.
I'm
So-
sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
If you give us your name and stuff, we can put you in touch with.
I can do that.
Yeah.
How do
Great.
you spell your last name, Susie?
SCHERR, not to be confused with
Shearer.
E. Other than that, you're,
Yeah.
S-E-H-E-R. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you so
Patty,
much.
I talked to Terrence as well with you that day, if you want, because I know that area very well. I can actually list the families
I've
that,
got a lot
yeah.
of resident requests for that area, so.
And we are I mean, if you're facing my house, our neighbors to the right are Chappaqua Schools, so we are
You are the last house.
You're the last one, yeah.
You are.
We
You're
are
the
it.
last house. I know that.
last house. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. While we sat here, I got an update from the folks who are following the federal story, and it says, over the weekend, House Ways and Means Chairman Brady stated the House would not accept full repeal of SALT. But he reiterated his hard line on including a property tax deduction of up to $10,000 as a compromise. House Republicans conducted a count of their membership tonight on the overall tax bill. Per Brady, quote, leadership is very confident that we do have and will have the votes for passage. So
That's a depressing note to end on.
they haven't seen our resolution yet.
And let's hope the Senate's a different,
Right. How they get reconciled is a whole nother matter, so. Any other subjects?
Nope.
All right.
I think that was pretty comprehensive. Thank you for all the information.
Delighted to have you here. Thank you for your assistance in so many things the village does.
It's a great partnership.
It's, and as Mary and I have had this conversation, although there are occasionally some bumps in the road, the level of cooperation that exists is not typical. And, you know, I comment on this to mayors in different places, and they say, what? What? You let the schools use your fields? Like, really? No, they let us use their fields.
Well, and those are places that have
Yeah.
umpteen
Plenty of
fields.
room.
Exactly,
Yeah,
right.
It's
So,
a completely different story.
at any rate, it's that kind of cooperation that makes Pleasantville, Pleasantville, and
That's
I
right.
thank you
That's
for that.
right, that's right.
It's a very pleasant place to be. It's all in color.
Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to segue to our regular meeting.
are you gonna take a quick break, or are you gonna just go right into?
Well, let's not take much. What do you think?
Okay.
We
No,
don't need a
let's
break.
go.
Let's
No,
go.
let's go. It's almost 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, it's like, wow, 8:30. This is gonna need to start taking a while.
Okay, so right now.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, well, I wasn't really.
Have a good rest of your evening, everybody.
Thank you, Lou. Take care.
Have a good night, Nicole.
Thank you, sir.
Take care of that. Are we especially spread out more than?
I guess I'm not in the middle. That's mistakenly not in the
Center
middle.
yourself, Peter, center yourself.
There are other people, I'm sure we can get more interest too.
There's Joe.
Yeah, I think I've had.
Thank you.
Thank you, Felipe. All set? All right, welcome back. We've just completed our joint meeting with the school board, and we'll continue with the regular village board meeting. Today is Monday, November 13. Our next regular meeting is scheduled for Monday, November 27 at 8 p.m. with a work session at 7. Two important things are happening at that meeting, Monday, November 27. The first is in work session at 7 p.m. We are going to meet with Jerry Liang of Sunrise Senior Living. As you may be aware, we received a letter from Sunrise a month or so ago proposing a significant change in the project they had originally presented, a smaller project, one floor lower and entirely devoted to memory care. So we're having a work session with Sunrise and their group on Monday, the 27th at 7 p.m. Anyone who's interested is welcome to be in the audience. And then at 8 p.m. we have our annual Youth Recognition Night, which is a great evening in the village of Pleasantville. Mark your calendars if either of those are subjects of interest. Tonight, if you have any comments or questions, you're invited to call in. Our call-in number is 769-1677. As mentioned, I'm back from Albany today, New York Conference of Mayors Legislative Priority Session. I made some comments about that earlier, and I won't repeat them at the moment, but on a future meeting, I'll describe the legislative priorities that came out of that for the New York Conference of Mayors and how that factors into the village board here, as well as the Westchester municipal officials. Any comments from the public on any subject? All right. We can go directly then to our resolutions. Number 188. Nicole.
Resolved that the pre-check register dated November 13, 2017 is hereby approved as listed below. General Fund, $269,052.26. Special Purpose Fund, $1,001.46. Water Fund, $32,701.22. Capital Fund, $85,034.24. Refuse Fund, $15,361.63. Trust Fund, $3,763.50 for a total of $406,914.31.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions on the check register? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. 189, Steve.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby appoints Philip Garcia to the position of Recreation Assistant, full-time, at a salary of $34,939, effective November 13, 2017. Said appointment is subject to a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks to a maximum of 52 weeks.
Is there a second?
Second.
Patty,
Yeah,
he will
the
primarily be working
comments
for
were-
the Panther Club?
Absolutely. You know, that program has expanded. We do need full-time help. I've met Phil Garcia. He comes highly recommended not only from Linda Bellafato, but from the Pleasantville Union Free School District, where he's been working as a teacher's aide. So we're delighted to have him
Great.
join our staff.
All righty, sounds great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. 190, Colleen.
Boy, these names are tough. Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby appoints the following persons to the Climate Smart Task Force: Teresa Conway, Ben Sarabin, Sharon Avrotnik, I never get that right, Russ Klein, Edwin Quo, Anjali Sothoff, Ryan Lamberg, Helen Muir, and Kathy Sable.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, but I just want to point out that we may want to strike the last name, and it's unclear whether she's willing to be committed to it at this point, so.
All right, so
Is
best,
Is it better to have her on and then not be, or?
No, let's just,
Should we just
we'll just
hold
wait.
on that?
We'll just amend it to include those eight names.
and not
Okay.
Kathy Sable,
Correct.
right? Because if that's acceptable to the mover and the seconder,
Yep.
all in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Joe, 191.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following budget amendments. There's a budget transfer from the general fund, $9,665 from police outside services to police equipment, telerecording devices. To appropriate fund balance, general fund, $4,500 from the Justice Court account to the grant expenditure balance for fiscal year ending 2017, funds rolled over to fund balance, whatever that means.
To put it back in.
Okay. And increase revenue and expenses in the capital fund, $16,886 from refund prior year expenditure to transfer to debt services fiscal year 2015 forfeited retainage.
Is there a second?
Second.
Fitted retainage?
Yes.
Yeah,
And
I can go over that. That was an old.
Forfeit, I've never heard of that.
Forfeited retainage.
What is forfeited retainage?
Forfeited retainage is money that we are not paying to a contractor that we've withheld from a capital project because they failed to complete the project
Got it.
100%.
It's a holdback
They've walked
that
away.
we're now going to keep.
Correct. They've walked away from the project and we are entitled to recapture that money. This
So
goes
it's
back.
they're forfeiting it, not us.
That is correct. This project goes back 4 or 5 years now. It's very old.
Cool.
All right. Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. 192. Nicole.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the minutes of the meeting held on October 23rd, 2017.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Comments or corrections to the minutes?
Good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. One piece of that is in those minutes also report the announcements of the workshop that we held on November 6th here, which was the first workshop for our Memorial Plaza Improvement Project. And although we mentioned in the school board meeting, worth reminding everyone that we anticipate the next of those workshops to be on Thursday, December 7 at 7 p.m. at the Clinton Street Center on Clinton Street, and that will be an occasion for further community input and also some preliminary ideas coming back from the design team. So that's Thursday, December 7 at 7 p.m. All right, that's the last of our
Peter.
regular.
Yeah.
So in the category of new business, as mentioned, I was back. Did you get this, Joe?
I showed you.
Yeah, right.
I saw that.
I'm going to suggest that we add another resolution, which would be 193, which, you want to read that, Steve?
Sure. Should I read the title as well, or just the
I
resolution?
can give you that in electronic form. Yeah.
Whereas Congress is considering tax reform,
Maybe just read what resolution number it would be.
this is 192.
Oh, okay.
right?
193.
193.
Yeah, just so it's in the record.
Sure. Whereas Congress is considering tax reform legislation that would eliminate or severely restrict the federal income tax deduction for state and local taxes, otherwise known as SALT. Whereas this deduction, which has been in place for more than 100 years, is heavily utilized by residents of the village of Pleasantville, and many households depend on this longstanding deduction to balance home budgets. Whereas New York residents already send $41 billion more to the federal treasury annually than the federal government returns to New York. And whereas the state and local tax deduction is a fundamental principle of federalism, and without it, our residents would be faced with double taxation, as they would be forced to pay federal income taxes on the taxes that they pay to state and local governments. Whereas these proposals represent a significant increase in federal taxes for many of our residents, which would place severe pressure on the village of Pleasantville to reduce our budget by cutting services and delaying essential infrastructure investments. And whereas increased federal taxation and reduced municipal services may harm local housing markets, decrease home values, erode local tax bases, and accelerate the departure of New York residents to other states. Now therefore be it resolved that the village of Pleasantville expresses strong opposition to any federal tax reform legislation that would eliminate or limit the federal deductibility of state or local tax, calls upon each member of New York's congressional delegation to vehemently oppose any such bill, and directs that a copy of this resolution be sent to Representative Nita Lowy and to the New York State Conference of Mayors.
Is there a second?
Second.
You see the slight text change I made there?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Right. So that follows the discussion we had in the joint session with the school board about the concerns we have about the impact on Pleasantville, but on Westchester and New York State overall, about the proposals that have been floated by the Senate and by the House for tax reform that would eliminate or limit the deductibility of state and local taxes. So it's the hope of NICOM, the New York Conference of Mayors, that every community in New York State will pass such a resolution. I'm happy to report that Representative Lowy, who represents our district, is on the record as vehemently opposing this already. That is not the case in absolutely every district, and so trying to put a flag in the ground. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. All right, that's the last of our agenda items. Any new business? Comment from the public? Is there a motion to go into executive session on matters of real estate and certiorari settlements?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Good night. See you in 2 weeks on the 27th. Work session at 7, regular meeting at 8.